We're going to get started, please. The first item on our agenda is any comments from any board members.
That was good.
Yes.
I see, that was good. Oh,
Almost.
didn't see.
I'd just like to, again, I've already done this publicly, again, I'd like to commend Superintendent Byrd, Dr. Rakes, and Deputy Superintendent Small for their effort in working to find a solution to the concern at Roosevelt School. And I know that was a team effort and a lot of work on everybody's part. We found a solution that was, I think, a good solution, a good fit for that community. Now, I know we still have some challenges, and I know that Dr. Rakes and I agree that at some point in time, we're still kind of in the sights of the state, and we've got to find a way to work with those students to make sure they're getting regular diplomas. But I know they're putting some strategies in place and some programs in place. And, just a great team effort, and again, just want to commend everyone for their hard work on that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any?
I have a couple things.
Okay.
Well, I would like to commend Superintendent Byrd and the entire leadership of the district for Saturday. Spent all morning at the ESE symposium managing the crisis at Lake Gibson while also being fully present at the symposium. Then managed the meeting at Lake Gibson and how that news got delivered extremely skillfully. And then they were at the Winter Haven High girls basketball game that night, cheering on the LBD. So, you know, I think I know how hard you're working. I appreciate your grace and your composure. I think the people who were there appreciate it. Tim, I appreciate what you had to say at the meeting Saturday. So big thumbs up for that, and I think we really served the district well. One other sort of small point of personal privilege that'll be good news before I get to something kind of bad. There's a teacher at Southwest Middle named Jay Gallman, who I think is one of our finest teachers in this county. He takes all kids and does spectacular things with them. He's had pretty serious cancer for the last few months. It had a very serious impact on him, and he seems to have beaten it, certainly for now, and is, as I understand it, back at work, doing the good work of educating our kids. So I just want to give a shout out to Jay and say we're proud of him and happy that he's back. And then also wanted to bring everybody, just wanted to make one point in continuation of the Lake Wales, the Bach McLaughlin issue from a couple weeks ago. I asked Joanne to send out a piece that I wrote this morning. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see it or not, but the upshot is that there's been a development that's very concerning to me, which is that the Lake Wales seems apparently interested in running the Jefferson County schools. That changes the equation for me pretty considerably. I want Lake Wales focused on Lake Wales because that's where I'm focused in my attention to their schools. I think the basic contours of a deal are there. They remain a commitment to geographic certainty, to taking all their kids and not exporting any, in exchange for strong partnership and a sense of operating under the Lake Wales umbrella. But we have a lot of details to work out on that first, and the move toward Jefferson County to me does not speak of good faith, and I'm looking for good faith. So that's just where I stand. It's not, nothing's done or said, but I am less optimistic about that deal than I was when you raised it, Laura. I think you were still absolutely right to raise it. I don't fault you for that at all, but there has been a concerning development for me. So with that, I'll be quiet. Thanks.
Okay, a couple items that I have here is Ms. Bird, I would like to have an answer on the BP funds. I've asked a couple of times about where we are on that, and I haven't gotten anything back. So I would like to know where we stand on that, especially since we're talking about resources that we need to have in place. And this is taking too long, in my opinion. We should have been on what we have as it relates to the BP funds. And I don't expect that I should have to ask for it anymore. So if somebody can give that to all of us, that would be great. The other item is, as it relates to McLaughlin, everyone was to submit questions. You were to submit them by Friday. My understanding is that everybody has submitted questions, or they have submitted none. And so now we're at a point now where we can compile those questions, and then we can have discussion once Ms. Bird has had adequate enough time for her staff to answer them. So if the question that Mr. Townsend, or the information Mr. Townsend presented today needs to be in the form of a question or whatever on that, on the sheet of questions, then that's something that needs to be added, because we're not going to have discussion on that today.
Right.
And I don't want that to get lost. And then the last thing that I have is, we talked about evaluating the superintendent at our last work session, and the superintendent and I met with Dr. Frejo last Friday and talked about the process that we used before. And for the board members that's new to the process that we used to use, is that Dr. Frejo would be the middle person. He would speak with each of us about our opinion on how the superintendent has performed based on the evaluation that each of us would do, and then have conversation with her, and then come back and present it to everyone at a work session. There was value, in my opinion, when we did it like that, and especially with having new board members, helping them to understand the process probably a little bit better than just going to an electronic document and answering the questions and then presenting it to Ms. Bird in a setting like this as board members, and not really having anybody that can maybe get some comments that each of us would like to share, but we really want to have more of a personal conversation. So he's going to write a proposal, and he's going to come at the next work session and present that and the process, and then it will be up to the board to determine whether or not you want to proceed using him as our middle person and get an evaluation piece done before we can do a contract with Ms. Bird, if you all want to use what was done last year. So that's where we are on that. Now, Ms. Bird, I don't know how we want to do this. We have the TOPS schools leadership here now, and I know they need to get back to their schools. So I don't know if we want them to come first before we do anything else. I know we have the executive session at what time, Mr. Burgess?
It's set for 12:50, but we can flex that.
Okay. Just out of respect, I know this is a very busy time for them. And so if we could let them come first, that would probably be best. If they're ready.
Are we ready? We have a couple of the principals here.
Tony can start out.
You can start? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, Mr. Bellamy?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're going to
begin our presentation a little differently than we have done in the past. What we plan to do is, one, is to talk about the top 5, and I call them the 588, because it's the top 5 plus 8, plus the 8 more that might fall into this category if the grade does not change. And so we're going to give some background information on that and how that occurs if it does not, if the grade does not improve. I know it may seem that it is a lot of data, but it really tackles some pertinent pieces within the school, which deals with, Mr. Small, I know whether you that one. Yeah. Which deals with the data from the content areas, and that's what we want to talk about this go around, to show where we are and the movement where we are compared to either the district or where we were last year at this point in time. And so we will review that, and we have put it in PowerPoint form so that you can see. And we have tried to be very consistent in the reporting of the data, so it's uniform across the board. Now, I will have to say that there are scenarios where in each school it may look a little different, only because of the nature of the building that you're in. And so what we have opted to do is have the principals report out on their data. And it's really not that in-depth, in meaning the length of the pages that you see there, but it is the description of what each of the charts represent, and the schools will then be able to tell you exactly what's going on. Based upon the data, then they will be able to tell you what they're doing to address whatever the data is stating. And so that is how we will present today. But to begin with, we want to start with the 3 of us. This is Mrs. Barnes and Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith will take the beginning portion, which will talk about the schools and how they get into differentiated accountability, the DA schools. And we have them, as I said, categorized, and I call them 588. That's sort of where we are right now. So, Mr. Smith?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So, if you look at page 5, that kind of summarizes pages 2, 3, and 4, kind of on one sheet, and you can start there and maybe work backwards through a couple pages. But the way that these schools are listed here, there are several, by rule, there are several stages of turnaround option, either planning or implementation. Obviously, the clock kind of begins with the school being graded either D or F, and as consecutive grades below C are earned, it kind of triggers a timeline. So the schools at the top that you see, the 5, the middle schools, the ones that we kind of spend the most time talking about, and the ones that are represented here today, are in the implementation, the first year of implementation of a second plan. Okay, so once you've implemented a plan, you've got 2 years to get C or better. Should that not occur, then by rule, you go back with a different plan and select another option. And then if you don't remember, the 5 options are district managed turnaround, closure, charter, educational management organization or outside organization taking over, or hybrid. So the original plan for these 5 was selected as district managed turnaround. After 2 years, these 5 remained in that status. So it was our responsibility as a district to bring forth another plan. So that's where those 5 schools are at. The next set of schools, the next 8, are implementing their first year of their first plans. Okay, so again, once a school earns a C or higher, then the timer resets, and all of that stuff goes away. So we're really aware of those 13. There's been a lot of talk and press and discussion about those 13. However, we wanted to make sure that you were aware of the next groups of schools as well. For example, the third group of schools that starts with Auburndale Central and ends with McLaughlin Middle in that chart, those are currently in the planning year. So what that means is they're facing consecutive years of either DRF, and should they not earn C or higher this year, then we would implement the first year of a plan next school year. So basically, they are on the precipice of being exactly where that second tier of 8 schools are right now. The Cumbies, the Eagle Lakes, and that group. Obviously, should they get a C or better, then they're off of that list. What's important to understand, however, is the planning phase begins now, and it begins during this school year. So on April 18th, we have a date scheduled for a community assessment team. As you know, the other 13 have community assessment team meetings that they've held throughout the school year. This third group of 8 schools, being in the planning phase, are assembling their community assessment teams now, because by rule we have to allow those teams to provide input into the selection, which of the 5 things that we are selecting as a district as far as the implementation of a plan, should we need to go that far. So that planning begins now. The April 18th date is set because on May 1st we have an intent document or form that we submit that basically says, as a district for these 8 schools, this is what we plan to do. So again, we're in the stages of making sure that we have everything in place in the event that any of those 8 schools do not earn a C or higher. Again, at which point, after that intent, then the actual writing of the document and the piecing together of all of those elements will come into play. Okay, so that's where those schools are. The last set of schools that you see at the bottom, starting with Alta Vista and ending with Winter Haven Senior, they are focus schools. Again, they are basically, should they not earn C or higher this year, they will enter the planning phase for a possible implementation of a plan in 18-19. So they're a year behind those. But again, we felt it was important for you guys to see and hear a little bit about what the rules are and what the timelines look like, but then also not just the volume of schools that we're talking about here, but which ones specifically are in that situation and where they're at. And then if you look on pages 2, 3, and 4, it's kind of just separated just to give you a little bit more information about that. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. So if any of these schools, you know, from not including the top 5, let's say, because they're already moving forward, if one of those schools gets to a C, now what? That doesn't totally, what does that mean?
Okay, so there's, as far as this process in planning and implementing, that clock completely starts over.
Oh, it
Okay,
does.
so they're off the list. However, there's also a 2-year DA kind of transition period. In other words, they've been receiving support. What we don't want to do is completely eliminate the support that we're
Right.
getting, because we want to maintain that stability.
Right.
So technically, Dundee Elementary and Jesse Keene are in that, all right, so
Category.
they're in that category. They've made it out.
Yes.
But there's 2 years of, let's still
Let's
kind of
watch.
keep an eye on this and be prepared to support as needed, because we don't want them to fall back into it.
And then if they did, would the clock start over and we'd be in focus and then going back up?
Yes.
Correct.
That's
So
my
That is
question.
It starts all over again, so they don't jump
So-
back. The only situation where it gets accelerated is with an F. Then it
Understand.
kind of automatically jumps a year ahead, because that's a little bit more crucial to take care of. But yeah, just to be, that starts over again, yes ma'am.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yes, sir.
Has the grading equation itself, all the inputs, all the cut scores, all the bells and whistles been set in Tallahassee at this point? Do we know what the actual grade scale will be?
Well, as far as what constitutes an ABC,
But
We do that.
is the equation and all the inputs that flow up into it, not what our inputs are, what they're gonna ask for, is that set in law for this year yet?
Yes.
for this
No, for
school year,
will these schools be judged on
on what's
something?
currently in
Yes.
place, yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's all set.
It is.
41%.
State statute changes.
Yes, the only real, right, unless the
Yeah.
statute changes, but as of now, it's, for example, for C, it's 41% of the total points.
No, well, I understand that. I'm saying, are the total points, all the things that create a point,
The sales.
are they all
That's
locked in
all,
place?
that's all locked for
That's
this
all.
year.
Is it identical to what it was last year? Is it identical to what created these grades?
Yes. Yes. The difference was 2 years ago without the gain scores, so last year was the first year that the gain scores were added. But yes, that's all in place and exactly the same as it was. Yes,
So
ma'am?
last year and this year were mirrored.
2 years of consistency, I guess.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
I always felt that after the scores come in, they readjust because they
I
only
think
want
they
so
do.
many A's and so many B's,
Okay,
and they actually readjust after they get the scores in.
so
Hasn't that been the
Right.
practice?
they will readjust for the following year based on the number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. You're right, they only want a certain percent in each category. However, it's set, and then should they need to adjust, because they did do that a few years back. where
I
we
thought
had-
they did it
So-
this year.
What is the definition of set? I mean, we're kind of like an is thing here. When does set not mean set? I
Well,
mean,
it's set for this year.
Right now.
It would be next year's percentages would be altered.
Determined.
So it could be 43% of the grade for the 17-18 school year based on where they land this year. So that's how they won't change the law or the expectations for the current school year. They may change it for subsequent years based on how the percentages in each grade level.
So,
That's right.
and so,
I'm not sure that's.
we asked
No,
Mr.
I'm not
Smith
either.
to,
They haven't.
if any more questions on that portion, I just.
No, I'm just saying, I'm not sure that that's the way it's operated. I think that they can change and make changes at will once all of this becomes public in the summer. And I say no more, because that's been the history. I'm sorry, but
So-
it
I
has.
will get clarification on that. I understand what you're saying is once they see scores, that
Right.
oftentimes we hear that the black box syndrome is kind of like, I'll get clarification for
That'd
for
be
your
great.
board members.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
So here's what I would say.
A history.
We had an opportunity to meet with the regional executive director for the state. And I will, before we move into the next portion of the report out for school, and we shared with her our dealings with the AMO and how it is working and where we are at this point with them. And the relationship that we have now finally built with them, and we feel very strongly that it is a good, solid relationship with them. And I will tell you, in moving a school, there's no one entity that says that this is it to hang your hat on, that will move schools. It is a compilation of all of it that we're working with. And so we did share with her our feelings and where we thought we are now, where we think we are now. And so those were our thoughts that we shared with her. And so what we are going to do now, we will bring the principal up and they will share out in the categories that we have selected to report out to you to show progress. And they will be able to explain their data and then what they're doing to address if there are issues, if you see issues within their buildings. One thing I can tell you, I have to say, being in those buildings last year and being in the buildings this year, and I know Ms. Cunningham, you was there, and I will start out with Boone. You were there the other day. Totally different than when it was, from when it was last year. And so I give great pleasure in allowing them an opportunity to come up and explain their data and talk about the culture of their school, because it really has changed. And I wanted you guys to know that. So, Ms. Chipman?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am here to share with you the information about Boone Middle School. And I want to say, first of all, thank you all to Mr. Bellamy and Turnaround Department for their support, and to all of you as well. And we're going to talk about, first of all, the student enrollment at Boone. The student enrollment you see from first quarter to the second quarter has been pretty consistent, with the change maybe in 5 to 10 students in 7th grade and 8th grade, but it's been pretty consistent throughout the year.
Question, is that like 6th, 7th, and 8th? What's the
ma'am.
3
Yes,
bar
ma'am.
graphs?
Yes, 6th,
Okay,
7th,
I
and
didn't
8th, so
figure-
that part was cut off, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. 6th, 7th,
So
and 8th.
6 would be the first set?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
7th and 8th. Okay, thank you. When it comes to student absences, the student absences were, I thought, were pretty low for the first semester. We have a success coach, and she's tracking student absences, and we do meet with parents. We have attendance meeting for the absences for students who have 5 or more absences, and then we move on to 10 absences. And so we do have those meetings with the success coach, like I said, and an administrator to hopefully deter a lot of absences. If you notice, in the second quarter, we have quite a bit of absences, and that was due to an ethnic holiday, and a lot of our students were out of the country or within the country, and they took the week off for Three Kings, and so we had quite a bit of absence during that period of time. And so, yes, sir, that's why that's increased quite a bit. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that one of the strategies for keeping absences down is to involve parents.
Yes.
Are you having some success with that? Are you finding that parents are engaging?
They don't show up as much as we would like, and some of the problems is transportation issues for our parents on the ridge, that they do have a lot of problems with transportation. And so, but we have all the meetings, and we try to do the conferences, parents conference on the telephone with them if they can't come, but we do the attendance meetings. And so we're keeping up with that with the success coach as much as possible this year.
So you're able to have some success with passing
Yes.
all the communication?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. For teacher vacancies this year, and compared to last year, we've,
Can I ask you one question?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, on so the second absence, the 82 is cumulative of the first, so it's
no,
like,
it's not, that's just quarter 2.
so we doubled absences this
Yes,
time.
yes. Okay. When it comes to teacher vacancies for this school year, the first quarter, we only had 5 vacancies, and now at this point in time, we only have 2 vacancies. That's a teacher, industrial ed position and an 8th grade math position, which we've been struggling to hire an 8th grade math teacher almost all year. And so we had a teacher start that position and then move to 7th grade because we had a 7th grade teacher move out of the state. So we had to fill that position. So we've been struggling with that 8th grade math position all year. But compared to last year, I think we ended, the majority of the year was between 13 to 17 vacancies at the school last year, and this year we're down to 2. So that makes, and that's through hiring and help of Anissa and Human Resources. We've done everything we could to be fully staffed. We do not have any provisional substitute teachers in our school. We have one sub that's been in the tech ed position since that teacher left, but she is not a provisional substitute, but she is a consistent day-to-day sub who was a teacher, a Spanish teacher previously. So she is we are very consistent in that classroom. And then again, the 8th grade math position is some day-to-day subs, but my math coach and my math interventionist is in there daily working with those students. And you'll see as we go forward with the results that those students are doing well. When it comes to teacher absences year to date, most of the absences are vacancies, and that's because off and on we've had vacancies. And now that we have those 2 vacancies that are consistent vacancies, that's why that number is so large. But it's just the amount of hours there. But if you notice overall, my science department in VE is where we have most of the issues with absences, and this year there's been a lot of absences because of flu and sickness, so that's what happened so far this year with the absences. If you notice in the next slide, this is just from the beginning of when we return after our winter break. And again, social studies is high because I have a teacher that's on maternity leave, and then in my ELA reading I have a teacher that is been quite ill, and so she's been out quite a bit for this school year. We're going to look at our data now for Boone Middle School. And first of all, we're going to look at the FAIR, which is a reading assessment, and it gives us a probability of success for our students. And if you look at the first administration and the second administration, you see that there's not a lot of change in that, and that is because in 6th grade, I have 2 brand new teachers. And what we're doing to work with them is my reading coach is working with them consistently. That one of them has a mentor, and then my reading interventionist is working with them also. So we're looking at there were 44% of our students in the red, which is the lowest percentage, and we want to be decreasing that. And when we notice that it increased, then we just scheduled the reading coach to be in there more so that she can better support that teacher. And then she had quite a few ESE students, and so we've scheduled an ESE para in there to be with those 2 teachers more during the day. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, when was admin 1 and admin 2
Admin
given?
1 is
Give me,
in
just
the
a month is fine.
September,
Uh-huh,
and then admin 2 December.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
What's your overall ESE population?
My ESE population, I have about 162 children out of 700.
And we'll get just one other enrollment question. Compared to what you ended with last year,
The enrollment?
yes, what's the size compared to the end?
The enrollment, they had 900 and something students last year. We have 740 students now, and that's because the Ridge, okay, I can't.
Citrus Ridge.
Citrus
Okay.
Ridge
Citrus
opened
Ridge.
up last year, and so they
Mhm.
had some rezoning, so some of
Rezoning
the
done.
children went to Citrus Ridge. Okay. And this is 7th grade data, and if you notice, we tested the same amount of students, 238 students on both of them, and we were at 18% in the red, and we've decreased that, which is good, we went to 17%. We stayed the same with the yellow, but we moved one student usually from, in the green, so it went from 13 to 14%, and the green means that their probability of passing the FSA is very high, 3 or more. So, and in 7th grade, we still have some very new teachers. In my reading department, I think the only teacher that's been there more than 2 years is one teacher, and she teaches 8th grade. The rest of the teachers are very new in my reading department. For a FAIR for 8th grade, we tested 226 in the beginning, so we had 11 more students to affect administration 2. We were at 14% in the red, and we've decreased that to 10%, which is a good thing. And we've increased our yellow students from 76 to 80. And there's no change, however, in the green, but we did test more students, so it could affect that amount of students that we have in the green as well. When it comes to science, this is our 8th grade students who will be taking the science assessment in May. And the district was at 45%, and our school was at 47.10%, which shows that we're above the district when it comes to our science scores. For civics, the district was at 48.3, and Boone was at 59.2. So again, we're above the district when it comes to testing for our 7th grade students who will take the civics assessment. For math, if you notice the first 3 columns that says greater than 80%, 60 to 79%, and the 40 to 59, that totals out to 53%, which means that 53% of our 6th graders are on track to make a 3 or higher on the math assessment. My concern is my 7th grade, because in 7th grade, I only have 25% that are on track and 75% that's not. I recently hired a math interventionist. Took a while, but I do have one. She came, I hired her in December. So she is working closely with 7th grade as well. And then we're doing some work with the math coach and our state person from math and our district person. So we're really working with those teachers, doing extra PLCs to help them to better understand the standards and then to be able to present those standards to the students. For pre-algebra, again, 8th grade is where I struggled this year in math with vacancies. I did hire a pre-algebra teacher. She came along in December. And so those students have struggled, and again, the reading interventionist and the math.
Sorry, can you say that again? When did your teacher come on?
I hired her in November, and then the math interventionist in December.
And you were hiring her, did you have a teacher there the previous year? Was that teacher one of the people who was removed? Or?
For math,
I think so.
one was removed and then one moved away.
So when the state removed your teacher,
Yeah, she
you
went to
had no one until November,
Yes,
and you hired someone in November,
Yes.
and 93% of the kids are at less than 40%.
yes,
I mean, is that a logical inference to make
yes.
on how the state behaves? Sorry, you don't have to answer that.
I just know that
You
she
don't have
was
to answer that,
removed.
sorry.
Yes, sir.
That was me talking. Sorry.
Okay, yes. Okay, so, like I said again, though, but we did finally hire a teacher for that position. She's in that position. She's working very hard with those students along with the math interventionist and the math coach, assisting her to make sure she's proficient in her classroom. For algebra, we have 92% of our students who are on track to make a 3 or higher. And then we're still working with those 8%. I'm looking for 100% in that. We have 60 students who will be taking the algebra test this year. For geometry, we have 13 students that will be taking the geometry assessment. We have 58% of those students who are on track to make a 3 or higher, 42%. And again, the math department is really working hard now that we have everybody in place except for that 8th grade math teacher, which would be in this classroom. Question, yes, Ms. Dahl?
Oh, when I look at these scores, is there any way we can predict how we're doing grade-wise from looking at these midterm points? Because it's kind of either the same, I mean, I don't see a great deal of improvement. I can't tell, but you maybe can tell. These scores, what does it look like? Are we making progress toward?
We are making progress, and I see the progress. And looking at the data and being right at where we need to be with the district or above in some categories, I think that Boone is doing well and is on track to at least make a C. But our
Okay,
goal is
that's
to
what I
make a
was-
B. I know that's what you want, but our goal is to make a B. So that's where
Okay.
we're working hard to get to that point. Okay. All right, we're going to look at our discipline for this year, and if you notice with our discipline, the only month this year that Boone was above last year is the first beginning of the school year where we started school earlier this year, so we're a week ahead. So that means we had a week extra with the students as opposed to last year. And also when you go into a school and working with the students and changing the culture of the school makes a huge difference. But if you notice every month after that our discipline has been well below what it was last year, and at this point we're about 65% below what it was last year with our discipline, and I think that has a lot to do with helping to work with the students, changing the culture, starting a Student of the Month incentive with the students and rewarding them for behavior and good characteristics during the school day. And so working with our PBIS grant and making sure we have the expectations and students know what the expectations are when they enter Boone Middle School, that it's an educational facility, that's what we're there for, and we have those high expectations for our students, which I think has helped a lot with the discipline for Boone. So we're excited.
And it really is a different, I have to go back and say again, it really is a different campus. If you get an opportunity to walk the campus, I was there the other day and the little girl said to me, can you keep Miss Chipman from being so mean? And I said, well, why is she mean? I mean, so she said, but she's just so strict. And so that brings about a climate of change. If you really, and I'm not saying anything bad, Ms. Chipman, but she has really taken control of the campus and has really made a difference.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that, having visited the school here recently, and having been there last year as well. There's a 180-degree change in the whole campus, the atmosphere, the children, people are engaged, kids are learning. You walk into any classroom unannounced, kids are active, working on stuff. I mean, the difference is night and day. So I do believe that you're going to achieve your goal, because you have truly changed the culture at Boone Middle School, and we're very blessed that you were able to take this on and do so, you know, with your whole heart and soul, because that's what it takes. And she's touching lives one child at a time, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wolfson?
This is really just a comment also, and I'm really not even sure how to express this, but it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit disheartening to hear that we have teachers who are trying to learn the state standards so that they can teach the state standards instead of teaching the skill sets that our students need to be competitive in our world. That's a little bit difficult for me to hear. I know we do it. It's unfortunate. But I would say that I think a much more productive approach is changing the culture. And, you know, and Shippen used to be at one of my schools, Lake Ship, and I've been there and watched her work with the children there, and she's wonderful at that. So I would hope if we could find some additional help for teachers, it would be working with our principals to help change those cultures and learning those strategies and implementing those strategies in our schools.
Just to follow, is there any doubt we've been better off to have kept the pre-algebra teacher we had than to go without one in November? I mean, can we just say that and say what was done to us is, anyway, I don't want to do that again. I'm going to tell you right now, I'll throw the computer around if that comes up for schools this summer. So get ready, Wes. One other sort of standing request I'm going to have is the difference between enrollment at the end of last year and the current enrollment now. So just everybody, if you could just let me know that when you come up, I would appreciate that.
Okay. Ms. Christian?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity to share promising and exciting information regarding Denison Middle School. Okay, before you is information regarding student enrollment for first quarter, which is listed in blue, and second quarter, which is listed in orange. And the total for the first quarter was 808 students, second quarter 805 students, and our current enrollment is 816 students. Okay. Next is our absentee information. This is students with 5 or more days of absences. First quarter, there were 70 students. Currently, there are 65 students. We have an outstanding attendance manager that is working with students, making phone calls to the home, scheduling the parent meetings during the year, and they are even going out making home visits. So it is having a positive impact on our attendance. Number of classroom vacancies, there were 5 the first quarter. Currently, or second quarter, there were 6 vacancies. We have filled 3 of those, and we currently have 2 VE, 1 reading, and 1 robotics vacancy. Teacher absences year to date. The majority of them are the vacancies that existed during the first and the second quarter. ELA numbers, that composes a larger group of teachers, so that is one reason why that number will be slightly larger than the others. Teacher absences since January 3rd, again, the vacancies account for the majority of the absences that are presented. This is our FAIR data for 6th grade. There was a 5% increase in the red. This has been due to 6th grade vacancies in reading that we have encountered. We do have one new 6th grade teacher that has started. He did answer the call to come support a top school. He was a highly effective teacher. Since that time, he has come in, taken control of that classroom, and we see great things happening in there. However, the other 6th grade teacher did resign his current position. So we are currently interviewing and looking for a replacement for that position. Next is our 7th grade data. There has been an increase in the number of students that are showing proficiency and ready for the FSA, an increase from 15 to 23%. In 7th grade, we do have one veteran teacher, and then there is one new teacher that is working very hard to catch up. 8th grade data, this is where we've shown the greatest amount of increase. You'll see the number of students in red has decreased from 15 to 6%, and those that are in the green have increased from 12 to 16%. And there are 2 veteran teachers that are currently filling those positions. Comprehensive science data, we are currently on par with the district. We have been receiving science support from the district science coaches. I believe that accounts for the percentage of increase that we've shown. Compared to last year, we were at 30%. This year, we are showing 45%. And this is a positive increase.
It's huge.
Earth Space Science, these are our students that take high school credit courses there at the school. The district average is 46%. Our school is showing 52%. Civics, this is based on the quarter 2 exam. The district average was 48%. Denison Middle is showing 51%. And last year we were at 51%. I'm sorry. It's 51. Yeah, last year we were at 51 as well. Okay. This is our math data. As Ms. Chipman stated earlier, the greater than 80%, 60 to 79%, and 40 to 59%. Those totals were combined to come up with the number of students that are on track to be proficient when they sit for the exam this year. Okay, in 6th grade, we're showing 19% on track to be proficient. There are 2 brand new teachers in 6th grade that we are working with. 7th grade math, there's 16% that is showing there.
So I would ask this one question. I mean, we've had this conversation before. I just want her to share out that even though in 6th grade you have that percentage and 7th grade the percentage, what interventions or strategies have you put in place to support those students?
To support those students, we offer after-school tutoring, and that is on a voluntary basis. During the school year, we recently brought on a math interventionist. She's been there about a month, and she's doing a great job going in, working with those students, doing some one-on-one, some small group sessions to support the students. Our math coach is going in. She's modeling lessons for our brand new 6th grade teachers, and they're showing a lot of promise. Okay.
How many students are participating on a voluntary basis? I mean, are you getting a
We have
classroom
seen a
full?
recent increase
Have you?
with students. I would say there are about 30 that are showing
Oh,
up
okay.
after school, and we provide an after-school snack for them
Do
as
you
well.
really? Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the difference between a math interventionist and a math coach and a math teacher?
A math teacher teaches and provides the curriculum. The math interventionist is just that they go in, they intervene sometimes within the classroom to assist the instruction that's taking place, or one-on-one or small group interventions with our students. They're more like your tier 2, possibly some tier 3 support. The math coach is there to support the teachers with the instruction, making sure it is standards-based, making sure it is rigorous. They're there during the lesson planning portion, before the lesson ever makes it in front of the students. And they also try to work with the teachers to make sure the lessons are engaging.
So where does the interventionist come from as opposed to, where did you hire that person from? Just out of curiosity.
They applied for the job, and there is an interventionist pool that the district has that takes, it looks at how long they've been teaching, their track record of showing success, and then a teacher is entered into that interventionist pool, and then we interview and hire from the pool.
Okay, so it goes teacher, interventionist, coach.
Yes.
Sellers.
Okay, how on track are you? I noticed your scores, I compared them with Boone, and they're a little different. So how confident are you that you're on track, or have y'all evaluated that?
We have graphs that we look at where we're making predictions. It is just that, a prediction,
Yeah.
until they actually sit for the exam. But we're very confident when we look at where we were this time last year compared to where we are this year. We see an improvement. Last year, we were only 2 percentage points away from a C. So with all the positive increases that we're seeing this year, we're confident.
Okay, help me understand this then. You got 94% pre-algebra, less than 40. How is that indicative of?
The pre-algebra?
Yeah, I mean, that's the.
Okay. With pre-algebra, those are our 8th grade students, and those are mostly our level 1s and 2s that are in the pre-algebra. Within the algebra consists all of our 3, 4s, and 5s.
Right.
So students that are in pre-algebra, they need that additional support. Those are the ones that our interventionists are working with. Our teachers are building lesson plans that are engaging to help bridge the gap that currently exists.
How many students are you talking about?
For the pre-algebra, pre-algebra, it's about 240 students.
Okay.
Do you know the numbers for the algebra and the geometry? For how many
Algebra,
students?
algebra, we have 3 classes, so I believe it's about 66. Geometry, we have 2, 44.
Algebra looks really good.
Yes.
90%.
And we have a veteran teacher that's teaching both of those classes. 7th grade advanced math, these are all of our 3s, 4s, and 5s, and they are on track to at least to be proficient 97%. Okay. And this is our discipline data. It is broken down by class periods. We are working very hard with our discipline data to improve the culture there within the school. During August, as you know, we started earlier, so there was additional days of school in August. Also this year, we have 8 periods instead of 7. So there's one additional transition that the students are involved in throughout the day when it comes to our discipline numbers. Some of the things we've implemented at school, we've implemented a hallway traffic pattern to keep everyone going in the same direction so that we don't have all of that crisscross and reaching out to touch one another as they pass. We've also implemented a tardy policy where we stress the importance of getting to class on time so that learning takes place from bell to bell. When that tardy bell rings, instruction starts. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed on your referrals for November, it was 233, and in December it went down to 142. What do you attribute that to?
Again, the hallway traffic pattern, and then also just focusing. Oh, yes, and then their vacation days as well.
Winter break.
The other question that I have, and Mr. Bellman, you might can answer this for me. Are the traditional schools the comparison for the district average? When you do the district average? The data, when you're doing the comparison, like math, where the schools are versus the district average, are the district average, are those traditional schools?
Yes.
I just think that we need to understand that those are traditional schools. that we're being
Judged
compared
against.
with.
You're saying, are these schools here judged against?
It's all schools.
Yeah, it's all the schools.
So Magna,
Yeah.
I'm asking him, let him answer, please.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
I'm
But-
just trying to get an understanding, because I know there was something in the paper that talked about one of the schools and whether or not it was all of the schools encompassed in that data, and I just want to get clarity on it.
Yes, ma'am. It is the traditional schools against, and it's a combination of all of the schools' data against these schools here that we're comparing them to. So, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Let me try to clarify for her. So, the average number is the average that comes from 100,000 kids. That's right for the whole district. Somebody nodding back there? Yeah, it's not the 65,000 that are in
Yes, sir.
normal school. Okay, thank you, sorry.
So I will say this, Ms. Christian is, I always have to give accolades on all of my principals, but working extremely hard. And again, this culture too is taking a turn for the better. And so I applaud her for her efforts and her hard work.
Good. Remember, I wanted to ask what the difference between last year's ending enrollment was and this year's is. What did you end with last year?
Oh, I would have to get that data for you. If you don't mind, I can
Sure,
email it to you.
Ms. Gregory at Kathleen Middle School.
If I could offer something before you speak. I've noticed that you have had two schools present and the same type of data is presented in both. And I might offer a suggestion when it comes to absences. You give us a raw number rather than a percentage. For example, if there were 20 absences in math, that's really meaningless unless I know the total number of people. It would be more relevant to know the percentage, because I think that's what we look at in students. What's the attendance rate of students, 92%, 95%, or whatever, and do the same thing with teachers, because one school might have 100 faculty members and another one have 75.
Gotcha.
And so for me to look at it, I don't know whether to be surprised or exhilarated in terms of the number of absences.
I got you. So what I will do, I will ask the principals to actually expound upon that and explain the number and the percentages that they are working with, because you guys would know. How
But just
many
going
teachers-
forward, I think your report would be better reflective on the schools if it showed teacher absences by percentage points rather than a raw number, so that you know reflective of the school size.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Reynolds?
It also, kind of on that same note, especially when it gets to the pre-algebra and algebra and geometry, knowing how many students are in each of those classes, because that's all 8th grade, but it's a big difference of if there's 280 students in algebra and 10 in pre-algebra versus the opposite. So just to know that number.
Okay.
Mr. Towns?
But just to be clear on the absent data, the numbers, so where it says 52 or 1 or 32, those are days missed, because, and not by an individual, by lack of having someone. It's just the total. If we were fully staffed and everybody was fully healthy, this would all be a zero thing.
Correct.
All right, so, I mean, to me, actually, this is more useful to me than percentages are, so both is great.
But if they have
it's good.
75 teachers and they have 25 absences, and they have 100 teachers and they have 5 absences, and you don't know that they have 100 teachers versus 75, how do you really know what kind of absence rate they have?
Well, I'm less interested in the absence rate than I am in the raw amount of absence that the kids are not being taught. Like, that's what's, as a stat for me, this is a very useful stat. 132 days of kids not having a teacher to teach them ELA is an incredibly powerful stat. That's my point. Don't take that away from me. I'm fine for you to give them the percentage, but I want to keep that. Thanks.
Because I'm going to present it that way.
I think you can add, add the additional
Yeah,
two.
two,
You can add
right.
both.
Right, yeah,
Ways.
they're not mutually exclusive
Correct,
at all.
yeah.
Just don't get rid of this,
Right.
please.
I'm Sheila Gregory. I'm from Kathleen Middle School. And I'm going to talk about student enrollment. We've stayed pretty consistent with our student enrollment. We started the year, first quarter with 620 students. And second quarter, we went up to 627. When I left the school today, we were right at 639. The kids are starting to come back from the other schools. Our students that were absent 5 or more days, we had a huge jump from first quarter to second quarter. And I can tell you that I had 3 students have babies before Christmas, so that attributes to part of it. You know, and the students do go home, they do take care of their babies, so they're truant. And we're working with the district staff right now to come up with a plan for them so they're more successful. Teaching positions, we've only had 1 in first quarter and 1 in second quarter. Currently it's an ag position. We have a student out of UF from their ag department who is currently doing that role and doing a wonderful job with it. Our teacher absences. And Mr. Townsend alluded to the 132 days in the ELA. I had 1 teacher who had a baby, which accounts for 80 days of those. But then also I had 4 out of 6 teachers new, and for every new teacher, and this goes with all of us, they're out at least 5 days each for training between tips, and then we had MCAGN trained. So when you look at those numbers and take away from it, then it looks a little bit better. In my social studies department, I had a teacher who had a heart attack in the classroom, so she was out for over 25 days too. Again, not making excuses, but there are stories behind every one of these absences, and I think that's kind of helps everybody put a frame of reference on what's going on. Our FAIR data is pretty consistent from the first to the second administration, except that we did go up a little bit with the green area in 6th grade. Again, most of my reading teachers are brand new. 3 out of 6 are brand new, and 1 of them is a PE coach who is now a reading teacher. So I can almost say he's brand new also, but he's doing a great job.
Can I ask one thing real quick? I'm sorry.
Sure.
About this is the FAIR stuff generally. Are these assessments the same? Like or when you take the second one, have you advanced down the line a bit? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes, there is an increase in the complexity.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I think that's what
there's
you're
nothing
asking.
wrong with not growing it. I mean, you want to grow it,
You want
obviously,
to
but
grow.
it doesn't represent a backslide.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And the second one historically, and I'm sure somebody can support this, is usually the harder of the 3.
Okay.
8th grade, we were pretty consistent also. Science, we are at 56.9 compared to the district 45. Our earth space is at 60 compared to the 58.9. Our civics, we're at 50.5 and the district was 48. Our math, and again going into the probability of proficiency to be on track, we are right at 37% for 6th grade. And I can say that that's over what we had last year, because last year we were only at 21%. And this is with 1 new teacher. Our 7th grade math, we're at 30. We have 1 new teacher there also. The pre-algebra, in our pre-algebra class, Ms. Reynolds, we have 146 students that are in the pre-algebra. And out of the 146, we have 36 that are slated to be on track. Last year, our school grade, we only had 29% that were proficient. So we're a little bit above our proficiency rate year over year. Algebra, we have 95% passing. We have 46 students in there. Last year, we only had 22. So we increased our student enrollment. We have 63 kids that are going to count in the denominator for those acceleration points. So we feel pretty confident by increasing that many, it'll give us some more points in that area.
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you went fast. What was the pre-algebra?
With algebra, last year we had 22 students that were in our algebra class, and it counts for our acceleration. This year we increased it to give us more students to count in the denominator. In the numerator, the denominator is the total number of students that scored a level 3, 4, or 5 last year in math in 7th grade. So we feel like by adding more students into it, we'll have more points in our acceleration piece.
So your overall algebra population grew to 63?
47,
I'm sorry.
43.
43.
43.
You doubled it.
Yes, we doubled.
And
We were very conservative last year. This year, we got a little out of our comfort zone to see, and they're doing very successful.
they are.
Ms. Sellers?
I was just going to add that on this one, it would have been very helpful to have seen your last year's. I like to see Polk too, but to have added the last year's, because then I could be seeing the progress.
Right.
It was very hard for me to interpret what it means without seeing last year's, and you've been giving it to us.
Trying to.
But-
We have a data wall that's, it's right there, it's in our face, and I know Ms. Fields has been there before to see it. And we do the year over year, especially in math, we have that data.
But that would be helpful for us, because then we can
And we
see
can-
for all of them, of the school. Yes.
We can go back and add that too,
Okay.
so that you will have it.
Do all of these schools have data walls?
Yes.
Yes, they do. Well, that's one of the requirements for these schools. Plus, the AMO has given sort of some directives in how to present the wall and how to put it up. And so all of the schools right now have very extensive data walls and rooms. I will tell you that. It is, you can walk and go from side to side to
It's all
side
over.
and see all of the data, and it's down from this data here. And so we sort of condensed this because we would have been here, we will be here all day long if we presented everything that's on the walls. And so that's the reason why we sort of wanted them to be able to express to you what's happening within the schools. But yes, ma'am, they're there.
And if any of you would like to come to one of the top schools, I'm sure my buddies in arms back here would say, come on down and come see it. I know I've talked with, Ms. Bird has walked through mine, and Ms. Fields has walked through mine, and Dr. Akes. And we're pretty proud of the data that's up there. We're tracking it, but we're more focused this year than we were last year. Our geometry, we are at 87% on track with it. And our advanced math is 93% on track, and that's with a new teacher in that position. So we're really impressed with him. We actually acquired him from Miami. So our data, again, we've gone down every month except January. January we did have an increase, but we also had more teacher absences. So we attributed a lot of that to having substitutes in the classrooms. February though, we're back on track, and we're down overall 7.9% from last year. And that's helping with the climate and the culture that we see there at the school.
And I will tell you, with Ms. Gregory, we did use her, and I'm gonna give her accolades on this, her tracking of her discipline. We had her to take a picture and send it out to all of the others. Now, not that the other schools were not tracking, but she was tracking period by period by period to determine when it was the height of discipline. And they made a determination it was during when they were taking lunch. And so they revamped, and so it has decreased
It's
during that
decreased,
time.
No more lunch.
No, they can't, nobody can have lunch until we've gone into every classroom at least one time during that period, and then as soon as we're done eating, we have to get back in the classrooms.
Yeah.
But every one of my administrators are charged to be in every classroom, every period, at least twice.
Yeah. So they've made a conscious effort to approach that. So, thank you.
The same enrollment question, what was the left off in enrollment last year? What did you have last year compared to, I think you got like 600?
735,
So you're down 100 kids?
yes, we are.
Okay. Ms. Grice, Lake Alpha Middle.
Hello.
Hello.
How y'all doing? Good. Thank you for allowing me to come and present to you today. We're excited about some of the things that are all the things that are going on at Lake Alfred Adair Middle School. And to all of you that have taken the time to come out and visit our school and been to some of our events, that truly makes a big impact with our teachers and with the administration to lift them up. So we really certainly appreciate all of the support that we're getting from you. And I just wanted to say thank you. So our first slide, if you notice, we had a decrease at 8th grade, but all the other grades we've had an increase. And this third quarter, we actually have had an increase in all grade levels as well. And so our population is growing. Since Christmas, we've actually had 120 new students come to our school. Since Monday, when this is only Tuesday, we've had 4 more students come in new to our school. So some are returning. They went elsewhere and they decided they're more loved at Lake Alfred, so they came back home where they belong. So we're very excited about that. Student absences, 5 or more days. We have 109 total. We are working due diligently with our support staff that we have. Ms. Hall, who comes to our school and has our attendance meetings. We have work extremely well with our parents. We're starting to find that we're getting more and more parent involvement. We actually use our ESE facilitator, LEA person, to do home visits as well. Some of these absences that you see, we've had some catastrophic events with some of our families that have interfered with their attendance at school. The latest being one of our students' house burned down completely. So we're working with a lot of the community members to provide support for those students. But we've also found that we have a lot of students that went back home right before the holidays and forgot to come back. So we had to get on the phone and tell them to come home. So they're starting to come back as well.
Is this that same phenomenon that Mr.
Yes.
was talking
Three
about, the same,
Kings.
same holiday?
I have one student that went back home to Ecuador and had passport issues and so we had to get that student. They're still in Ecuador, waiting on their passport. So, but those days add up. One student and you're out 20, 30 days. I mean, it adds up. So, this next piece, and boy, is it tough getting to be old. Don't know if I need to keep my glasses on or not. The number of classroom vacancies. Currently, you see we have 3 classroom vacancies, reading. We have a long-term sub in there. We have a science position that's open with a long-term sub and critical thinking. And then we have additionally a non-classroom openings that we've had, which is a reading interventionist, math interventionist, and a VE position. I do want it to be said though, every one of these positions has been filled once, twice, if not 3 times. So they've not gone empty the entire year, but we've had some issues with personal illnesses and such that have caused people to have to resign their position. The only one that I've not filled at least once was the reading interventionist. So they have all been filled at one time or another with a certified teacher. Okay, if you look at the next slide, the vacancies, where you see on that tall green, that is the vacancies and their absences, because it's counted as absences. And then we have all the rest of the areas, some of which were 4 subs that we had in there at one point. And then on this one, this is without the substitutes in it. So these are just teacher. And when you have a lot of new teachers on campus, first-year teachers, but get those babies in, that's 5 days times 10. That's a lot of days that kids, they're out because they go to training. And so it's a little deceiving, but still.
600 vacancies? I mean, 600 days of missed teachers? I mean, that's from the one before, I'm sorry.
From the one before? Correct.
600 student days
Correct.
missed.
Correct.
But that's by class period too.
Yes. So yes,
Sorry, I'm sorry.
that's okay. Hey, I lose sleep over it as well. Yes, sir. Okay. So then we go to our FAIR data. Now this FAIR data, you've seen everybody else's, where it says 97 kids and then 102 kids. Those kids, they're not just we added 16 new kids. It could be that a difference of 30 kids because you have 6 new kids, you get some that leave, you get some that come back in. So it's really not comparing those apples to apples. But we've stayed consistent in our data. So we've moved, if you look from the first 6th grade fair to the second 6th grade fair, we went up 7 kids in the red. We went up 4 kids in the green, 5 kids in the yellow, and we stayed pretty consistent. 2 to 3 percentage points is pretty consistent. If you look at your our math fair, it's a difference of 1 student in this 7th grade. In the red, we went down 3 students, decreased, which you want to do, from 22% proficient or to 20% if you look at percentages, from 102 to 105 in the yellow, and then in green we went up 1. 8th grade math, fair, sorry, I want to get to that math. You notice that we decreased by 9 kids in the red, increased 5 in the yellow, and increased 1 in the green. And we went down 3 students in that particular grade level during that time of testing. So we look at our comprehensive science, 8th grade science. We're about 4 percentage point difference with the district and with us, where we are currently. And we've looked at our science and what we need to do, and we have a plan in place. We're going to do a boot camp, which fits right along my personality. And we're going to look at our standards and where we're weak, and we're going to hit it hard. We're going to do a boot camp during the day, and then the after for 8th grade, we're going to have right after school. Catch them during the week where they're going to come in. We're going to have hands-on activities to support the standards that we've taught during that day. And so, transportation is an issue in our school, when getting kids home. But we're building positive relationship with our parents, and we'll blitz those parents and convince them that that's what needs to happen with those target and our focus kids, because we know who they are. We also have a new teacher in this 8th grade area. And so that's been a challenge as well in learning those. And that person came in October, okay? But she has a good peer that she works with who's very, very strong. And so I think we'll get some gains there. If you look at the next, it's our earth-space science. Our earth-space science. And we're a little bit higher, 2 percentage points in the district. Our civics, when you look at where we ended up last year on the testing, is at 39%. Currently we're at 39%. But we have, I'm not real excited about that percentage. And so what we've had is we've had our district coach, Tara Allen, come in. We've looked at our pacing, we've looked at our standards, and we've looked at what we're doing in the classroom with the kids, and we've made those adjustments. And we're monitoring it very closely, and we're in those classrooms all the time. And we're also talking with the kids and building those relationships. So I do believe that we'll do much better than where we were at last year. But this is currently where we ended up at last year, and this was taken in January. So math. Let's look at math. Currently, we have 28, in our 6th grade, we have 28% of our students that have a 40% probability of scoring 3 or higher on the FSA. And I will touch base with you all about what we are doing with math when we get through with the information. 7th grade, we have 13% of our students that are taking 7th grade math with a 40% probability of scoring 3 or higher. If we look at our pre-algebra, which is 172 students, we're at 6% of our students having a 40% probability, greater than 40% probability of scoring 3 or higher. Our algebra, which is 49 students, they're our 7th and 8th graders, level 3. We had 92% of our students have a 40% or greater chance of scoring 3 or higher on the FSA. Look at our geometry, we're at 70%. Probability of scoring 3 or higher on the FSA. And our advanced math, we're sitting at 52%.
Can you tell me again how many kids you have in the algebra?
Yes, sir. Our algebra was 49 students. Our geometry is 10. So we're working real hard at keeping those youngsters right where they belong with us.
What's your advanced math, Ms. Grimes, the 7th grade?
I don't have that number written down, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I can send it to you. I apologize for that.
No problem.
So what are we doing with math? We had 2 math interventionists from the beginning of the year. The last one resigned due to illness in right before December. I got it rained down upon me, a wonderful math coach came knocking on my door. And we have worked that individual since January, hard. And we are using our critical thinking. We adjusted our critical thinking classes, so they're front-loading the math that they'll be seeing in the classrooms. So when they go to their regular math classes. So what do I mean by that? Well, we know what standards are going to be going into. We know what classes, because we do have it where they have a common planning time, both critical thinking and the math, because originally those were additional math classes that were changed to critical thinking because I couldn't fill with 5 math teachers. And so those teachers are working hard with my coach because they're substitutes, P2s. But we have a really cohesive group there that work extremely well together. So I do believe we're going to see some gains in our math. I really, truly do believe that. If I didn't, I'd tell you, but I do believe that. They're working hard. We have Rhonda Rivera, who's coming in, and our math teachers are going to class every Tuesday and Thursday and 1 Saturday a month for the 5-act training, math training. We've had our state support math person come in. He's actually done some modeling in the classrooms with our teachers. They're basically all new to our school, all but one math teacher. And so, but they're a good group of people who are dedicated to serving the kids. And so I'm really excited about what will happen. We're doing a math fair where, after looking at all of the data and the standards, and I have to tell you, we look at grades all the time. We have data chats periodically. We have a data room that is just, we use all the time. And we're pretty much point blank with where the grades are. Whether it's too much on one side or too little on one side. And we look at the grading and we look at the student work. And I can tell you that the student work has, not only has the student work gotten better, but the quality of the assignments that we're using have gotten better. And so we're very excited about that. So the last page, I'm pretty excited. This is two-sided. Obviously, I'm pretty excited about the data regarding discipline, because we are down 50, any month, we're down 50% to 45% from where we were last year. Okay? Those 120 kids make a big difference, and if you notice, we see some of those areas, and that's right around lunchtime and the end of the day. So what we've done is every new student in January and in February, we pull those new students. We go over the code of conduct, we go over the code of the expectations. I have been meeting personally with those youngsters once they've had that meeting, and if they're not making good decisions, they come in and they see me. And so we have that Grice time.
Yes.
Okay?
Come to Jesus.
That's right, yes, sir. And so I can tell you, I have a lot of confidence in my staff. We've had a lot of turnover. We've had a lot of turmoil. We really, truly have. We've had some devastating events with our, teachers losing spouses, dealing with illnesses. you know, in students. We've lost two students this year. You know, that has a big impact. But I do believe that that has aided us in building a culture that is calmer. And maybe what's been experienced in the past, don't know, can't speak to it, wasn't there. But I can tell you that those kids are loved. And the expectation is that they will do well. And I have some that fight me, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to be okay. So, thank you. Any questions? I apologize. I'm just trying to get off the hot seat here. Yes, sir.
You mentioned parental involvement. What are some of the strategies you use to get your parents involved?
We have blitzed. For example, we had an awards assembly the other evening, 2 of them. We have our band playing. We have an art show tied to it. We have a science night tied to it, trying to get them in. You know, I do not like, you know, Jeans Days. I don't. So we bribe the kids with Jeans Days to get them in. We cook for them. And still, we're still struggling to get where we want to be, which would be 50 to 60%. We're struggling. We're more like 20 to 25% of getting parents in. The awards assembly, we had 246 kids that received awards, and they're nice awards. But the kids were like, they didn't come because they didn't know they were getting awards. Now, mind you, we sent an invitation home. We pulled them all together, we handed them another invitation, and they still didn't come because they weren't sure they were going to get an award. So those are the type of things. But you go with those awards, you have that nice night, you then make sure that those kids that didn't show, I pulled them all in, I made sure that they received that week their awards. And it isn't just a piece, we do it right. And I think that's the piece. You know, and blitzing and parents learning that when I tell them that we're going to be doing something nice for their kids, they're going to be there. And I think that it'll grow over time. But it's going to take time. It really is going to take time. Yes, sir.
What was your enrollment again at the end of last year? I remember you gave this out at the meeting.
I have it in another report. I don't have it in front of me right here, sir.
Roughly 800?
Yes, approximately. We did have, we were 80 less students. I do know that because a lot of we did those overage kids. Okay? But that enrollment has come up. We had 2 of the kids that went over to the Frostproof area. They came back, you know, so I'm getting, Mr. Bellamy's making me hot over here. He's staring at me, get off the floor, guys. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I will have to say in her defense, seeing the campus last year to this year, it's like a ghost town when the bell rings, because this little lady here, I mean, when I tell you she runs a tight ship. Kids are in class. Now, it's what happens within the class that now will make the difference. And before I bring, okay, hold on. Now, Mr. Bennett, up, I will tell you that so that you guys will know that we did meet to discuss all of this and so to make certain that our principals are prepared. Turn your collar down. There you go. So that we are prepared, and we met with Lake Alfred Adair. That's where we met, and when she says she feeds you, she really does. She fed us the other day when we met to conference and to try to put all this into a packet together. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bennett now. There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for having me. I want to thank Mr. Bellamy and the Turnaround Region. They have been a blessing. If we needed something, everything we needed was a phone call away. So I want to thank him. Thank you for supporting him. Thank you for just saying, hey, what do you need? And it was done. So thank you for that. If you look at our student enrollment, to answer the question that's been asked several times, last year we ended at 780. We're at 779 right now, so we're relatively the same. The influx in grades has changed a little bit, but that happens. Number of students that were absent, the first 9 weeks, or first quarter was 119. Second quarter we had 87. We heavily incentivized attendance, had attendance nights, rewarded kids that did not have attendance problems, and that had a tendency that has helped. It's not a huge difference in number, but it is a reduction. In the classroom vacancies that we had 5 at the end of first quarter. We had 3 at the end of second quarter. We currently have 2, one in a self-contained VE and one in music course. My course teacher became a dean at our school, so that is a positive. Teacher absences, vacancies equal 549 or 579 of those days. The gray and the yellow are elective and ELA. Those represent 12 teachers, and the 148, the ELA, represents 12 teachers as well. So those are my largest groups of teachers. Everything else is basically 6. If you look at our FAIR data, we tested relatively the same amount of kids. We had a slight increase in level 1s, where level 3 stayed the same in 6th grade. 7th grade, we had a slight decrease from 1st to 2nd in level 1s and a slight decrease in level 3s. And in 8th grade, we had a slight decrease in level 1s and a slight increase in level 3s. On comprehensive science, we were 1 below the district at 45. We had 20% proficiency at this time last year. Under earth space, again, we were right below the district at 45%. With math. Math is one of the areas where I have 3 provisional substitutes. 6th grade has 2 of them. And when we took this exam, both for 6th and 7th grade, our pacing was behind about 2 weeks. We since then caught up the pacing, and we're also error analysis. We're reteaching those standards that we missed, that we looked at, that we saw were having the problems that were conceptual issues with the children, so that we're getting those, and then we assess those every week to see if we're making ground in those. Even with these numbers, we're still ahead of where we were last year. Pre-algebra, I want to explain who is in pre-algebra. Pre-algebra is only 1s and 2s. That represents 175 students. Algebra is 75, and geometry is 22. In algebra, we are 97% to be proficient. Geometry, we're 100% to be proficient. In 7th grade math, I want to explain who's in that column as well. That helps you explain some of the 7th grade numbers. Every student that is a mid-2 or above in 7th grade is in 7th grade advanced. I want to push so that we are ready for algebra content for the 8th grade year. So the 8th grade advanced, the 7th grade advanced actually teaches those pre-algebra standards where the 7th grade regular does not. So we want to push as many children as we can. The kids that are in the level 1s and low 2s are in intensive classes so that we can help fill in the gaps that they are currently having.
Do you know the number of students for the 7th grade math
Not off
versus
the top of
advanced
my
study?
head, no ma'am. Our discipline. Now, if you look at this is crazy looking numbers. This is more of a reporting issue than a behavior issue, and I want to explain. Last year, we did a behavior tracking form in which teachers tracked the first 4 behaviors by teacher for every behavior that happened, whether that was a tardy, whether that was a dress code, whether that was a minor classroom disruption. This year, we're tracking every single thing in Genesis. Okay, so you have a child that has 7 or 8 classes, he has 8 classes. They had 32 of those or 36 of those would not be in Genesis. Does that make sense? Okay, so now those are logged in Genesis so that we could document those parent phone calls and we could document those interventions that we are having and providing with our students. The number of suspension days, and this is not on this form, is down by over 400 for the first semester. So that is a very positive move in the right direction. And we talked about lost days and what discipline does to those. We have 400 positive days that we did not have last year at this time.
You have what room do you have when students?
We have a bridge. And that bridge program, we do tardy roundups and we make sure everyone is in class. We don't have an ending bell. So if you come on our campus, you will hear a first bell that releases them to class. All the teachers in the hallways, greeting the kids, clearing the hallways, and we all close our doors together. There is no one in the hallways. There is no ending bell. The teachers decide when that starts. And so they clear and they own the hallways and own those tardies. So that has taken that away. That is not a problem anymore. If there's a kid that's not where they're supposed to be, we round them up, we take them to the bridge, we contact mom and dad, explain what's going on, and mom and dad have been very, very helpful so far in reducing those numbers.
And I will tell you that initially in the beginning, teachers had a concern about discipline and tardiness and responding. And so we met with the faculty and staff, and we came up with this plan to reassure them that we will address whatever concerns or issues that they have. Mr. Bennett has done an excellent job, along with Ms. Wells, along with Robert Knight, who is his AMO representative, to rectify any of that. And so I just wanted to share that with you, that they have made a big turnaround. I like that word, turnaround, at Westwood.
Questions?
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to commend all of the leadership of the schools. I know that it's been a very challenging time for everybody. I've had an opportunity to go into a couple of the schools. I'm going to be visiting others, and it's amazing to me to see how they work together with their team, seeing a lot of the teachers and groups working together, best practices being shared. And so I just want to encourage you all to continue to do what you do, and we really appreciate what you do for us and for our students.
Ms. Cunningham?
I also wanted to say something for Mr. I'm sorry, cut somebody out.
Ms. Cunningham, didn't you?
Doesn't matter, either one. I just want to echo what Ms. Field said as well. Thank you so much for the hard work and the dedication, because it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job, and we know it when you're touching children's lives. I love the data. I understand there's some tweaks that can be made, but to have presented this in this way, I thought was exceptional, because it's at a glance. You can kind of tell what's going on. In addition to that, I see one area that is consistent throughout, and it's pre-algebra. Certainly don't have the answer, but in every school, and so it'd be interesting to see how we could maybe, as we move forward in our schools, how to target that. I know it's a smaller percentage of students, in some cases it's larger, it just depends, and that's the only consistent thread that I see in all 5 of those that may need some more attention as we move forward. So, but thank you so much, great presentation.
Mr. Townsend?
I just want to echo what everybody's saying, but I also specifically for Mr. Bennett, I want to compliment your band director, Allison Land, who had a record number of Westwood kids in the all-county band this year, and for the first time had a jazz band during a very, very difficult year. So I just want to give a shout out to her. I also want to ask, because we're about to talk about magnet schools that affect several of your schools. While I got you here, Ms. Grice is going to be sending kids to Ms. Chipman, right?
Yes, sir.
Can we talk about how that's going to work? And I hate to, have you guys been consulted on this and how this is going to affect you?
Do you want that?
Maybe, I hate to make them hang around more, but it seems it's important.
You want to bring them back up, those 2?
Well, as part of the overall discussion, I don't know how you guys think we want to proceed.
Can we take a break and then allow them to present that information?
Sure.
Yeah,
That's what I mean. I just didn't want to
Executive session.
We've got to go.
Right,
Oh,
that's what we're waiting on.
Executive session, we should have had
Okay.
An
an
hour.
hour ago.
We do need a break.
or 15
Okay.
We do need a break.
We can break, and I know we have the executive session that's coming up. So if we take a 10-minute break right now?
Madam Superintendent, if you'd like, I can go ahead and make the announcement about the attorney-client session. That way, when we come back, we can just start, because it's going to be in this room.
And how long, what's the projected time for that, so that everybody knows?
Yes, ma'am. I am guessing that this will be a relatively brief attorney-client session, 30 minutes perhaps. We have previously noticed it in accordance with the law. 286.011 allows the board to meet privately with the attorney for the attorney-client session to talk about litigation strategy. and I mentioned this to you at the last board meeting, made the public announcement, and we published it. The people who will be present will be the members of the school board, superintendent, the deputy superintendent, myself, Drew Crawford, and John Murphy if he's here. My estimate is that it will probably take about 30 minutes. But that, for the duration of that period, we'll have it in this room with a court reporter. The entire thing will be transcribed, and the transcript will become a matter of public record at the end of the litigation. But for the next 30 minutes when we come back, we'll clear the room except for the people who are privy to the attorney-client session. And I think Mrs. Hall is over there assuring that our recording equipment, broadcast equipment will be off for the duration of this meeting. Thank you.
So we'll do a 10-minute break and then we'll come right back in this room for the attorney-client session, 30 minutes.
Thank you.
Am I correct? Okay.
You want to say something?
I did.
Okay, that was good, thank you. Nick?
Yep. Want to just see if there's any questions?
Yeah, there might
So,
not be any questions.
Yeah, might not be anything.
looking at the agenda for today's meeting and starting with the minutes, there's a correction that needs to be made with the work session minutes on page 2. We were talking about magnet schools, and I made a comment that basically said that we need to discuss the historical perspective of the magnet school, and it was type charter school. So we need to change that, because that would be a work session item that we're supposed to eventually have. And again, that's on page 2 of the work session for January. Anybody else have anything on the minutes? Anybody have anything under the consent agenda items? All of those items there, anybody have anything on those? I'm going to the regular agenda. Ms. Selby, did you have something?
I was looking at the surplus vehicles, and we have an 11-year-old van, and it only has 37,000 miles on it.
It might be a typo, I
Yeah.
think, it may be
Oh.
137.
Okay, because I'm thinking, that's not very much
Yeah, it's more
mileage,
like
even though it's,
237.
oh, okay,
Yeah. Based on the
I
others.
saw that too, and
Yeah.
okay.
so I'll get it.
All right, so on the regular agenda, anybody have anything, any questions under there? All right, and we do have school board policy updates, so we have a public hearing. All right, so that's that.
Okay, to try to expedite some of this in time, we're gonna kind of go start with number 9, because I think these will try to put some of the things I think we can get through without any, if there are no questions. So Wendy has policy updates. I don't know if there are any questions on any of the policy updates that Wendy has.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Are there any questions? Or you need some more minutes? Okay.
I just have a quick question. This is,
Mr. Wilson?
the first one, let's see, where are we there? Elementary schools, middle schools. Under D, with some changes, it says character development program.
Are you talking about 2215, the program of instruction? Okay, I see where you are.
See where I am?
Yes.
So, it says, the board shall provide a character development program which is secular in nature.
Mm-hmm.
But could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? I'm not sure I understand.
That's straight out of statute.
No?
Which is not coming from First Baptist Church,
Right.
nor
I
from the
just-
Catholic Church.
But I'm just wondering what that means, secular. I don't know what that.
Non-church.
No, I mean, I know that, but I'm wondering what they have in mind of what the underlying essence of that is. But if it's in
I don't
statute,
know
it's
if
in
there's anyone
statute.
here from, but we already have programs that comply.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. The next one that we have Captain Wiggins for item, I believe it's number 8, proposed agreement with Mr. Davis. It's the MOU with Florida Poly.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have a memorandum of understanding between the Florida Polytechnic University. Well, let me back up. This is Captain Rick Holland from Florida Polytechnic. This MOU is essentially an agreement to assist each other in the event of an emergency. It also deals with emergency management planning in the event of a crisis. So specifically in the event that Florida Polytechnic has an emergency which requires the evacuation of their campus, they're asking that we provide a campus for them for reunification and potentially transportation to that reunification site. I believe right now they're looking at Tenor Rock, which would be the closest high school to assist them in the event they have to take all of their students from Florida Polytechnic and reunify at an alternate location. So basically that's what they're asking for, and that's what this agreement is basically stating. In addition to that, it deals with emergency management planning that would benefit both of us as far as, you know, what they may have as far as data and practices that may assist us at the school board.
When we say reunification, we mean on the day of the event?
Yes, on the day.
Or an ongoing way?
Not ongoing. It's the day of the event. If they had to evacuate their college, to transport those students to that location, for them to eventually be for reunification, essentially, not a long-standing teaching at Tenor Rock. It's just temporary.
This is another chapter of our emergency operations plan, our continuity of operations. This is the last piece that we're trying to get pretty much settled in. We're in the middle of nowhere, and having a auditorium or something, because we can't allow the students to leave campus. And we know the impact, if it does impact, let's say, just not our school, but the school district. We understand that first priority is going to be with the school district, and then will be secondary. Hopefully, this would be just one event that's happening on our campus that we have to clear out, perhaps to improvise explosive devices or something like that. Will complete shutdown of the campus, and we can't let students leave. We'll actually have to send them somewhere. Now, we've already got partners with our food services, so the only thing I would be asking is for shelter of some sort for a long-term, not long-term, but for an investigative purposes where the detectives could go and find them, interview them, and then they can be reunited with a loved one.
Ladies and gentlemen, I suspect that this is the first of a series of these that you are likely to see. This is trending in Florida and elsewhere.
Would this be our first of such agreement?
To the best of my knowledge, this is the first one of this sort that we've had with a post-secondary institution in Polk County.
Well, who is it trending with? I'm curious. I'm sorry.
I just understand that this is an initiative amongst the public colleges to make sure that they've got something like this included in their disaster plans.
To what extent is it reciprocal, or is it?
We, as far as reunification in every school's disaster preparedness plan, they have an alternate site already laid out. We don't include, Florida Polytechnic is not included in any of our schools as far as reunification goes. However, this does cover planning and any data that they may have, which may benefit us. We're not asking them for a reunification site, but if they have any data as far as emergency management planning, we will receive that from them, but we're not asking for a specific location in the event we have an emergency.
Also, our resources, I mean, even though we're very small, most of all, every one of my officers actually have come from the county. I did 26 years with Polk County Sheriff's Office, retired as a captain before coming over to the, so I mean, we've got over 100 years experience with that. Most of my guys have been in emergency operations, so I come from a long line. I did 21 years on the Sheriff's Office SWAT team, and I commanded emergency operations through hurricanes and everything else. I did all 3 storms back in 2004 for the east side of the county. So this is one of the preparations. Hopefully this never comes, but how we would reciprocate is a lot of your schools right in that area are close to our campus. And for a quicker response, we are the perfect storm, meaning that Florida Polytech sits in either the northwest part of a zone or a district, or a northeast or southeast. We're at the edge of every municipality. I mean, Auburndale Police Department, we're sitting at the northeast of their city limits. The districts, we have 3 districts that we are either at the south end or north end of that district. So, for a quicker response, we could actually, we get dispatched by Lakeland Police Department. So, and they have our numbers, so it's easily to reciprocate, go to those, calls for service if there is an emergency or event on one of your schools.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And
Mr. Wilson?
So are we building that into our plan that we can allow mental health if we?
We actually have a mutual aid agreement with the Sheriff's Office. So all the city municipalities plus any law enforcement has to sign an agreement that if called upon, we go and render aid.
Okay. Any other questions?
I mean, I guess basically it doesn't make any sense for us to have a formal reunification site when we have 120 sites. It makes more sense than having one site to have a formal. That's why it works that way, right? Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna jump to the proposed zoning. And that's gonna be Pam Lewis, I believe Carolyn Bridges, and Rob Davis.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Pam and I are going to talk to you today about rezoning Indy Elementary and Lake Alfred Adair as part of the magnet school process. This is the unfun part. We always get excited when we get the money. It's always a little bit more challenging when we have to do the rezoning piece. You have on your tables there, you have just a quick overview of magnet schools to give you context for the rezoning. And then you have a second PowerPoint, which is the green, that is sort of, okay, I'm sorry to steal the thunder, but it's sort of a historical perspective. So at least it gives us a little bit of a snapshot. And then some data, which also gives you some history on what's happened in the 2013 grant. And that first sheet you have is just a quick overview of where we are with choice in Polk, because I want to separate out magnet schools, which account for 12.6% of our students that are moving outside of their traditional zone schools, as just a small portion of that 32.8%. I think the difference for magnet schools that impacts the district as a whole is the fact that magnet schools, the FTE stays with us, whereas if you're looking at a choice component such as a charter school, students transferring out of the district or using the McKay scholarships to go to private schools, those students are taking their FTE dollars with them. And so sort of a concrete example of that is Lake Alfred Adair. We have 50 students that have applied that were either accepted into Discovery or former Discovery students. So if you calculate that, that's about $350,000 a year of FTE returning back to the district. And if you multiply that over the 3 years that they're at that school, you start adding up into some significant dollars. So just as a quick reminder, and I apologize for those of you that have heard this before, but we have some new board members, so I want to make sure that they are knowledgeable or at least have the same framework to work from. Magnet schools were created not to be academic centers, not to make parents happy or unhappy, but they were created to desegregate the school system. And from USDOE's point of view, or from the Office of Civil Rights or the Department of Justice, that is their purpose. Our magnet schools have been very successful in terms of academics, But their primary purpose was to desegregate not only the school where the magnet school sits in, but those surrounding feeder pattern schools as well. And so magnet schools can be part of the original magnet school desegregation order, which is the 8 original magnets, or it can include new magnets as we've continued to add magnets in the past 2 grant cycles, and that's what we're talking about today. New magnets must meet minority isolation group criteria in order to be considered as a magnet school. That means when we look at the community that's to be desegregated, the magnet school that we're selecting to work with must be at least 10% outside the community demographics. We've also made a priority, as has the federal government, to make sure that we take a look at if we can do magnet schools and turnaround schools at the same time. Just a refresher, the grant.
What do you mean do magnet schools and turnaround schools at the same time?
Rather than choose a magnet school that is minority group isolated but isn't in need of turnaround, to try to make sure that we meet the needs of low-performing schools by selecting those as our magnet school sites. We had a list of schools that met the minority group isolation requirements. When the list was sent to Ms. Bowen and then the superintendent at that time, the decision was to look at both turnaround schools and new magnet schools to serve those purposes. And that leads beautifully into the 2 schools we've selected as new magnets, which are Cumbie and Lake Alfred Adair. You just heard the presentation from Lake Alfred Adair. Then we have 1 school that we're transforming from choice to magnet. A choice school, remember, is a school that the community wanted, but it's not, its central purpose is not desegregation. And so when we change a school from choice to magnet, we have to then track to make sure the school is actually enhancing, both in their feeder pattern and in the school itself, enhancing desegregation. And then the third provision of a magnet school grant is the revision of existing schools. We've been working in our last 3 grants to include a seamless K-12 International Baccalaureate program. Remember, we started out with just the Bartow IB, then we added the Haines City. We've added 4 middle years programs, and now this will be our 3rd PYP, or elementary school program at Brigham. And then we're also doing a revision to Rochelle School of the Arts to add a STEM component to the already really strong arts program. So I wanted to take you through the process of how the schools were selected. So we generate that list of schools that meet the minority group isolation. It can be Hispanic. It used to be, when the original desegregation court order was done, it was black and non-black students. That was the language in that original deseg. USDOE has now expanded that definition to include Hispanics. So then once we have that list, we cross-reference that list with the students who are part of the turnaround program schools. Then that list was sent to the chief academic officer, Ms. Bowen. I met with her, we sat down, looked at which schools we wanted to do and why. Recommendations were then made to the superintendent. Once the decision was made, you remember I came to you, we did sort of a quick overview before we submitted the grant. Here are the schools, here are the ones that we selected and why.
Can I interrupt you more quickly? When was that? What was the exact date of
That was in February of 2016.
And the original decision to do this was when? Like, so you guys got set in motion by?
The grant dropped very conveniently December 21st. So it starts a 45-day cycle to write at that time. We'd already prepped in advance to do that, so we were fairly far along in January when we came back. We were able to do a pretty good overview in February, and then the grant was submitted in March.
So late 2015, really formally move forward in March. Okay, sorry.
Right, no problem. No, this is, everyone else here is going, yeah, we know. So feel free to ask questions. What enrollment processes have already taken place? So there's no change to zoning for Daniel Jenkins, Brigham, and Rochelle, of course. All students who are currently enrolled at Cumbie and Lake Alfred Adair, they're eligible to enroll. In other words, obviously, if you're a 5th grader at Cumbie, you can't re-enroll in Cumbie because you're going to middle school next year. At Lake Alfred Adair, The sixth grade will move to seventh grade, and we've done the applications for that seventh grade. The seventh grade is not part of the grant application, but those seventh graders will move on to eighth grade and be housed at the site. The decision when we looked at the grant, if you remember, that was back when we had Lake Marion Creek, which was a fifth through eighth grade center. So we included the fifth grade in the grant since that seemed to be a direction the district was going. Since then, in talking with Mr. Small and Dr. Akes, I think we're going more to a traditional 6-8 K-5. So we're going to honor those fifth grade applications that have come in for that small cohort and have the fifth grade, they'll roll to sixth grade. And then we'll work with USDOE to eliminate the fifth grade option. So Lake Alfred Adair will be a typical sixth through eighth grade center. Then at Cumbie, we have 514 of the 567 eligible students reapplied to attend Cumbie, which is over 90% of their students. Will increase, because obviously we've got to make some movement in minority group isolation and all those pieces, so we'll increase their enrollment to 768. And by having a new kindergarten class, except for siblings, and these additional seats, we should be able to do a couple of things that are really good for Cumbie. One of the things is they have a really high mobility rate, and so this should stabilize that mobility rate to some extent, because you can move anywhere in the Lakeland zone and still be part of Cumbie Elementary. And then we continue to hold the applications open because of that mobility rate. As parents move into the school, they're given a paper application to apply, just like they would be to be a part of the school, the enrollment process. So they have the option to be a part of it. And we're talking about rezoning those students between Philip J. O'Brien and Boswell Elementary, that small group of students. But I want to really emphasize 514 of 567 is a snapshot in time. Okay, because those kids are moving in and out. Now, the 514 who applied, when they move, let's say they move to the Crystal Lake Elementary zone, we see a lot of transfer between those two. They still have their seat at Cumbie, but it may change the numbers of how many students are returning to the school because those numbers are constantly shifting. Then at Lake Alfred Adair, we have 180 of the 232 sixth graders that have already applied. You heard Ms. Grice talk about that high mobility rate. Again, we're keeping that open so that they can continue to enroll their sixth graders. We'll enroll all of those seventh graders into eighth grade. We have a almost full new sixth grade, so we're pretty excited about that, particularly some of those kids that we've been able to attract back from Discovery. And
Are we trying to contact directly any of the kids we have not reached through applications? Are we making
Oh,
calls to the
absolutely.
parents? Are we going out to find them and say,
yeah, we've done a number of parent nights for them, both at Lake Alfred and Winter Haven, and then we're actually doing home site visits. We're meeting with the kids at school. We're trying to find out why they don't want to go. So we're continuing.
what do they tell you?
They don't want to work. Honestly, I sat down with 5 kids myself in a little circle and said, okay, tell me what it would take to get you to come to Lake Alfred Adair. And they said, we just don't want to do that work. You keep talking about science and math. And so that was a little discouraging. So we encouraged them to look at the hands-on. And you heard Ms. Grice talk about the after-school hands-on program. We're actually running that through the grant. So we hope that when some of these kids actually experience the hands-on application of the work they're learning during the school day, that they'll get more excited about it. And I think sometimes kids say that when really they're intimidated and they're afraid they won't succeed. And we do tell them that if they're level 1 and 2, we work them through a summer online program to get them caught up so that they are successful when they come in the fall. And some of them go, I don't want to do a summer program, so we try to tell them it's fun and interactive and on the computer, but sometimes you just have kids that aren't as motivated as you would like. So we continue to work with those kids, and that's why it's open enrollment, and we work through it. Yes, ma'am.
It's a highly mobile area.
It
So for
is.
all those kids that move into the original Cumbie area, will they automatically have to go to Philip O'Brien or Clarence Boswell, or will they have an opportunity?
They all have an opportunity to come.
even if the enrollment, I mean, because you might move in
We're
in
gonna run
August.
enrollments all the way through, probably October, which is when we're looking at starting the New Year's enrollment. So even all through the summer, we plan to do that, just because of the mobility rate. And it's a mobility rate issue in Lake Alfred as well,
Yes,
so that's
well,
why we're doing
that's,
both
it
of
would be
them.
both.
Right.
And would this be ongoing, or is this just for the second year? Because they're gonna be moving all the
So
time.
hopefully it'll stabilize
Yeah,
somewhat.
sure.
It will absolutely continue. The problem is when we cap out, when we reach our facility cap. So we talked about sixth graders going to seventh graders going to eighth grade. We had a question about siblings from a couple of parents. In other words, Lake Alfred's in sort of a challenging place. The magnet school zones butt up almost where Lake Alfred Middle is. So you've got the Haines City zone to the right, and you've got the Winter Haven zone to the left. Lake Alfred is in the Winter Haven zone, but you've got some Haines City kids who are zoned to Lake Alfred. So those students, if they enroll in the school and their siblings want to come, we're going to go ahead, because we're transporting those students anyway. So Rob very graciously is working with us to go ahead and include those siblings. It's a little easier to do there than it was at the Dundee K-8, because we're only talking 3 grade levels after next year. So hopefully that will address some concerns. Then I wanted to also mention how access is provided at Magnet and Choice for special ed and ELL students. Magnet and Choice applications, we don't ask if you're ESC or ELL or any of that. Once you are accepted, we run the list, we cross-reference it. If you're an ELL student, we put you in just like any other student. If you're an ESC student, it's a 2-step process. If we look at it and we know the services are already available at the school, we go ahead and put the student into that program. If an ESC student, if it's a service we're not sure the school can provide, then we go ahead and send it over to Dr. Steinke's office. They make a determination on availability of services, and then we move forward with placement, or if they have a range of services that we cannot provide, just like some zone schools can't provide services, then we go ahead and we allow Dr. Steinke's team to work with them on that placement.
Can I ask you what the typical ESC ratio is for and the non-gifted ratio for magnet schools? I mean, the ones I've seen are around 5%, where the district tends to be about 11. Is that consistent?
I think for our new, so I'd like to separate out new magnets and old magnets. For our new magnets, for these 3, I know I looked at Dundee L's the other day and it was a little over 10%. So they're running significantly higher. But again, it's going to be a question of how many students apply to the magnet school and are accepted, because it's that random lottery that we've got to do. And then if those services are available. So, I mean, there are students with Asperger's, there are students with all sorts of spectrum services that are provided, but it's a question of if they choose to apply and if they're randomly selected. What are the challenges of maintaining an equitable enrollment system? So one of our challenges is with free and reduced lunch and the community schools, which I think community schools is a wonderful thing. We want to feed as many kids as we can. However, one of the things we're looking at, remember our weighting system looks at SES, race, ELL, and ESE. And so we have priority weighting for that. And so it's a little bit difficult to look at free and reduced lunch numbers. And this is a national issue. It's not our issue in Polk County. This is a national issue. And so it's one of the things they've asked us to look at in this grant, specifically in Polk County, because we have a nationally recognized enrollment system. And so they want to see if we can fix it and then share it with everyone else. And there's lots of districts looking at it, not just ours. Another challenge is a great problem to have, but we have a lot of people applying for the magnet schools. We have over 10,000 applications that we handled this year, which when you think most of the grades are full, except for the new schools. That's a lot of kids who are in that applicant pool. Sometimes that makes diversifying the schools more challenging, because remember, after that Supreme Court ruling in 2007, we can no longer look at the individual characteristics of a child. So it used to be that if we needed more minority students at Brigham, we went on into our list and we said, oh, let's pull the minority students. Or now we would have been able to say, oh, let's pull the low SES students. Or let's pull a whole group of ESE students. But that Supreme Court ruling said we can't do that. So we've done the 1 mile grid area where we identify the students with common characteristics in that 1 mile square. But the problem with that is, just because a square, I mean, if we were all part of that square, there's a lot of diversity at the table in lots of ways. And so just because I happen to pull, I'll pick on you, Ms. Reynolds, just because I happen to pull Ms. Reynolds to go to a magnet school, that may not be the characteristics of the rest of the people in the group. So that is the challenge that the Supreme Court gave us when they gave us that 2007 ruling. And I just wanted to remind you, the other piece of that is that we made a decision to keep our waiting lists. We talked about that for a long time, those of you that were on the board at the time. We had multi-year waiting lists. In some cases, we had schools that had predominantly minority waiting lists. You know, and so we combined the two lists, but when you ran out of students of one particular race, you continue to add to that waiting list. So you see Rochelle's minority numbers creeping up gradually, because it's not just those students, it's the siblings of those students. Other of our traditional magnets that weren't part of the new grants, we saw the same thing. We saw if you had a predominantly non-minority list and you kept accepting kids and kept accepting kids, that we had lists that didn't, that the waiting list numbers didn't end till about 3 years ago. And now they may have siblings coming up, which we have a priority for those kindergarten siblings. So that has been a challenge, and we knew that when we did it, but I just wanted to remind everyone that that is part of the issue that perhaps makes it a little more challenging these days. So I wanted to end on a positive note. So what are the advantages of magnet and choice schools? First of all, it honors our unitary status agreement. When we finally got to that wonderful 2000 agreement on consent, one of the ways we got there was we said we handle our magnet and choice schools predominantly in the same manner that they've been handled in the past. We also provide meaningful choice. The FTE stays here with us. We've got some great equipment and teacher training and things we've put into these schools with that $35 million we've gotten, and we've created or will create 3 out of 4 seamless K-12 International Baccalaureate streams. And hopefully using some of those grant dollars allows other district dollars to be spent elsewhere. I just wanted to remind you, I read an article early this morning about Title I funds and the portability idea of dollars being almost like backpacks that kids wear. Wherever they go, the dollars go. So we certainly are expecting to see increased choice, whether that is magnet choice, charters, or vouchers. USDOE has put out some information that there will be increased funding for enrichment and diversity grants around choice. And Florida's, of course, new choice requirements allow a student to choose any school they want to go to where there is room, whether that is in district or outside of district. At this moment, we don't have a lot of students transferring outside of district. We have an awful lot of schools that rim the edge of Polk County, whether it's Osceola or Hillsborough, so that does increase the likelihood that that will continue. And the increase in charter school funding makes it more likely that we'll have more applications. So that's always a possibility as well. Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at down the road. Is the original Cumbie, this magnet, is the original Cumbie district always going to have some weighted priority? Because I can see down the road where, as people love magnet schools, more and more people are applying for the magnet schools, and with the mobility, suddenly this district, they end up, the children that actually live there will be going to Philip O'Brien and Clarence Boswell if there's not some kind of effort to be sure that the original zoned kids, does that make sense?
It does, it does. So we have certainly looked at that, and I had a conversation, I think I sent Sarah Beth something, Ms. Reynolds in the email, and Ms. Fields, and I had a conversation about piloting priority programs at a couple of our schools. We don't have priority in our process right now, or proximity as a priority in our process right now. We are looking at piloting that. We have to take that through that whole process. So USDOE and the Department of Justice, Office of Civil Rights have already said that we can pilot that.
Here?
Here. Now, when I say here, I don't necessarily mean Cumbie. I mean here in Polk County. So we can determine which of the schools we want to do that in. We've got about a year to take a look at that. Right now, March 11th, all those letters go out, so as soon as I get past that date, we'll have a moment to breathe, and we'll start working on proximity as a priority, and we can certainly look at how broad a pilot that we wish to do. But that's not something that we've had a discussion on, so I don't want to, that's just something we're looking at this point in time. But it is absolutely something that we see as something we'd like to do.
And another question is, Philip O'Brien kids can apply, if I'm reading this right, Philip O'Brien kids can apply to Cumbie, but Boswell
Right,
kids.
Boswell kids would fall into that Winter Haven zone.
Okay, so they would not, but they will be receiving kids, okay, the kids that are then in Boswell's zone, but were in Cumbie's, are they not allowed to go to Cumbie? Does that make sense? If you look at the Boswell new map, that bottom part of kids that are now gonna be zoned to Boswell, it's the bottom of Cumbie's, if you look at the map. These kids right here, they are now Cumbie kids, but are they?
No, they can still apply to, okay, thank you,
Oh,
that's an excellent question.
Okay, I see it, I see the line.
So magnet choice zones are determined by the high school the students are zoned for. Those students are zoned to a Lakeland high school, so they can still apply.
I see the pink
Okay.
line. It was kind of hard to see everything.
I know, well, and there's so much information on there, but yeah.
Ms. Cunningham?
Okay, looking at the Lake Alfred Adair Middle rezoning, different set of maps. My concern is, if I'm reading this right, we're taking students, rezoning students from one top school to a second top school.
In Stan Plaza Focus School.
So, to me, I mean, we're taking, I think it's close to 100, I don't know the exact numbers, but from this morning's conversation, going from Lake Alfred Adair to Boone Middle School, and here we're dealing with all the issues at Boone. So, that's question one. What are we gonna, I mean, here we are trying to lift that school and they're making changes. Now you're gonna take 100 more students, whatever that proportion is, 15%, and add another 15% students to Shelley Boone, number one. Secondly, as we did all that rezoning originally for Citrus Ridge, we talked about having the elementary school students on the east side being able to all go from each school to move to the next middle school together. None of that information is on here. I kind of feel like I'm blind. So are we, I mean, are all the Horizons kids moving to the same place? Are all east side, is all that kept, is all that integrity still maintained because it's not in here? Or have we had to split kids up?
Yes, ma'am. As far as the, we completely understand your concern about moving the students to Boone Middle. Unfortunately, there was not a middle school in this area that was also not a D school. And geographically and because of transportation cost, it was the only option. Now, speaking about the Horizon students and the other students, one of the things, and Mrs. Bridges, I'll let you speak more to that. One of the things that is going to happen is Dundee Ridge will be available to apply to, and you can explain more of that, as well as there are some seats left at Daniel Jenkins, which will also be a possibility for students to apply to.
So they're just gonna be split, which is what, right, they're not gonna be able to have that straight feeder pattern like we had promised all those parents in those meetings.
The straight feeder pattern to?
From elementary to middle, going to the same, in other words, you remember
I do.
Pam? I mean, because she was in all the meetings with me, yeah.
Yes, yes, I do understand. And
Right.
these, except for the Horizon students.
Right.
The rest of the students would have been zoned to Boone.
Right.
East
So-
Side students,
Okay.
et cetera, they would have been zoned to school, to Boone. The only ones
That being
that would
affected.
have gone to Lake Alfred Adair would have been the Horizon's
Horizons
fifth
group.
grade to sixth grade.
Sixth grade. Okay, so then with the issue with Boone being a top school, okay, so my question is, has this been run by the state and all the people that we are accountable to, what we're doing? Because, it would not be unrealistic to expect, I'm just gonna say it, a drop again next year. If they come out with a C and then now you're influxed, it's a new environment, it's all that again now. So what
one
are
of
we
the
doing?
One of the things to minimize that is that every Horizon student who is rezoned to go to Boone through this process will receive a letter inviting them to apply, because it crosses the magnet school zones to send them to Lake Alfred.
Sure,
So
sure.
we're going to hold seats for them at Daniel Jenkins and Dundee Ridge. We're going to expand the offering, so I want to.
For Horizons.
Just for those Horizons kids.
Okay.
We're going to do a special open enrollment. We're going to invite every single one of those students to apply. There'll be a letter, there'll be events, there'll
Sure,
be all
okay.
sorts of things.
Okay.
Specifically, so the majority of those students who would have normally gone from fifth grade to sixth grade at
Yes.
Lake Alfred.
Yes.
Now we'll have a special
So
open
option.
enrollment period. So we're really hoping that that's minimized, that there aren't
That's
many
it.
students
Okay.
that go to Boone.
Okay.
Because
But what about the group, if I'm looking at this right, there's a group that was currently zoned to Lake Alfred Adair that's going to Boone.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, those are the kids, every one of those kids will get that letter that says,
But they're
If
not all
you-
from Horizons because they live here. No, they're not from Horizons. That's what I'm
okay.
asking, the ones that are, you answered the Horizons and the elementary question.
Okay, so
Now let's go to the middle school area that's zoned for Lake Alfred Adair that's now going to Boone.
And let me clarify that that includes that whole area.
Right.
Okay, so anyone who so if you live on the pink side of the map.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I have to go to colors.
That's okay, I'm good.
If you live on the pink side of the map, you can choose to come right back to Lake Alfred Adair, right? Because you already live there, you're zoned there, and we're holding a special application, same thing. You were zoned to Lake Alfred, we want you to come, here's your letter, right? If you're on the green side of the map, right? You can't go to Lake Alfred Adair because that crosses magnet school zones.
Got it, got it.
So what we did instead is say for those kids, because I'm with you, we don't want to send a bunch of kids to Boone.
Right?
We're sending them a letter, we're saying, we're not opening enrollment for Daniel Jenkins and Dundee Ridge to the general public.
Right.
But for that group of kids, because you can't go back to Lake Alfred, we're instead gonna open seats for you at Daniel Jenkins, which is also one of the new magnets. So if you're interested in, let's say, the Polytech program, remember both Daniel Jenkins and Lake Alfred will feed into that Polytech program. Or if you'd rather be an IB student, and you just missed open enrollment or you never thought about it, here's seats here as well. So we're trying to
So
minimize.
when you look at the two maps, the two paints, there's that where it says 1662. See, on the
Got it.
first map, now go back under it, now it went from light pink to dark pink.
Right.
So I'm assuming all those kids that were at Lake Alfred Adair are now going to Shelley Boone. Is that correct?
Well, if they're sixth and seventh graders,
Yes.
they're going back to Lake Alfred.
So it's just the 8th grade?
No, it's just the.
If you're a sixth
Incoming
grader
sixth
now, you're
Right.
going to seventh grade,
Right.
you can apply to Lake Alfred, because it doesn't matter that you crossed the zone, the fact that you were at the school or
Will
your
allow you-
sibling will
okay.
allow you to go.
So what do you think the numbers will end up at Boone? Maybe I should have asked that question first.
It may help to take a look at the spreadsheet that goes along with.
Yeah. I tried to make sense of that. Right, it doesn't, no.
The first.
I can get with you after here, because we're limited on time.
Okay. I saw Mr. Harris, then.
Go ahead.
Ms. Townsend, then Ms. Reynolds, then Ms.
I hope this is a quick and easy question. On both maps, you show adjacent zones. I haven't yet found out what that refers to. Because it doesn't make sense if it's another school, because some of them would be going the opposite direction, it appears. For example, I'm looking at the middle one. What's 1032? Where do those
1032
go?
is, that's Citrus Ridge. That is the Citrus Ridge zone.
Because it's not
But it is
identified
not
as
part of
Citrus
this
Ridge.
rezoning.
So they would go past Shelley Boone to go to Citrus Ridge.
The dots that are up there in the Citrus Ridge area
Mhm.
are students that have, for some reason, requested a transfer and are already attending school at Boone. Whether that's because a parent works at the school or they've requested a transfer for some other reason. Those students would be zoned for Citrus Ridge, but they are attending Boone.
You have the same thing at the bottom of the map, 1341.
See, that
Whatever
is,
that is. Because you'll have to go
I believe
across
it's
the green
Denison.
area, which is Shelley Boone, unless you're going south.
That's the same with those students there. Those are not students who are actually zoned for Boone or for Stambaugh, but for some reason, some reason they have transferred, they're transfer students into those schools. So these adjacent schools, the only ones that we're talking about the rezoning on are the blue and the red. The students that are outside of those zones have transferred in for some other reason. They are not zoned to go to either Stambaugh or Boone. I hope that helps.
But in those adjacent areas, they are still part of that school zone.
They are part of the school zone. Like the 1032 is Citrus Ridge zone. Then we've got Westwood and Denison and
And I noticed
Crystal
one
Lake.
little, what we refer to as spot zoning. If you look at a little bitty white dot, straight south of 1662. Looks like you've gone around the street or something. There's just a little bitty white dot right there.
Close to the green border.
Yeah, it's right between the green border, the adjacent, and the pink, right at the, where they intersect there,
are you on the,
right here.
that is, that little area there, that little white, that's where the magnet zone crosses. The pink line is the magnet zone.
Why does it go
So-
up and encompass and not encompass? the
That
little
is probably
area?
a cleanup that needs to be done, as far as our mapping.
I know, having
is
been on the
concerned.
planning and zoning board, it was a real no-no to do spot zoning. We tried to avoid that at all costs.
But that area there is, you're really looking in the swamp, so there are no students living up in that area. But that is a cleanup that probably does need to be done, so that is a good point.
Thank you.
So let me sort of cut to the chase. What if we decided not to do this? What would happen?
If we decide, do you wish to consider a different rezone or not doing zoning at all?
I guess what I'm asking is, are we committed to do these magnet schools? We've already spent money on them, right? This is
Well, we
down the road.
accepted, yeah, we accepted the money and we've spent probably a little over $1 million of the 12 million. So I don't know what the next steps would be. If I'm directed to do so, I can certainly.
No, I want to make sure I understand where the process is. I mean, it's not practical to stop this process at this point. Is that what all you guys would agree on? We're going to cause ourselves much more harm than good if we try to do that? Okay. With that in mind, I mean, are these zones as good as any? I mean, there are no good zonings. So, yeah, I mean, we do need to have a serious sit down, probably on a weekend, where we can spend 8 hours going through every magnet school, what the purpose is, what the enrollment is, what the history is. You know, this whole thing we're dealing with Lake Wales is in large part because of our magnet schools in the past, which of course we had to have because of the DSA order. But this thing we do endlessly seems to me to be harmful. So anyway, I'm not going to throw a stink and say don't vote for this today or anything. That would be a dumb show vote. I'm not going to do that. But I'm probably done with magnet schools until we sit down and really go through the ones we have. So I'll be quiet now.
Carolyn, does this document here address some of the concerns that apparently he has, and it might address, instead of an 8-hour presentation, that this is the history of
Yeah, this is sort of how we got to where we are.
Okay.
So,
For those of us who've been around a while, we know that. Okay.
Yeah, it might be a good
No, that's not going to address my concerns. I want purpose moving ahead. You're welcome not to come, but I mean I am going to want to have a discussion about these kind of schools moving ahead, what their reason for existing is, and what the trade-offs are.
Michael, when did we find out that we had gotten approved for these magnet schools? Specifically, like Alfred and Cumbie.
I want to say end of September.
Okay. It's just concerning to me that we're this far in the process and just now looking at where these students will go if they don't apply to the magnet schools, that it seems like our website should reflect in March where you're going to be going next year for middle school if you don't apply. For people moving into the area that are new or things like that, that's my biggest concern, is that we haven't addressed it moving forward.
That's what this is about today,
Yeah,
right?
but I would in the future like to see it
Well,
Even earlier than that?
earlier than
I think we
than 6 months
usually
later.
do. Just as a quick reminder, this has always been Brenda Tejuri's world. And when she passed away, I think it took us all, first of all, off guard, but she had so much history in the process that I just have to really compliment Pam and her stuff. But I know the first day that when we had the principals meeting to talk about rezoning was the first day that Brenda's replacement was actually there. It was his first day of work. So I think that part of the, I think you're absolutely right. We usually try to have this done much earlier. I think we just had a series of
And I mean, this is
No,
great, and
yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you answering my email so quickly. It just is hard to explain to Alfred why they don't know yet.
Oh, absolutely.
And we do understand that, and this may have been something that was on Brenda's radar, but she passed away so suddenly that this has put us probably behind the 8 ball, quite a bit more than we would like to be. And now that we're aware of these things going on, this will be something that will be done much sooner in the process. So we do understand that concern.
Well, I mean, we need to be thinking ahead. I'm sorry. Can I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, did I catch well?
No, yeah. Ms. Sellers, then Mr. Townsend.
I think because it's so late, I understand that you are gonna keep the enrollment open and people that move in, because that's, you're caught off guard, you plan to move someplace. I have a hard time, because when we look at everything, I don't want us to do the same things that charters are doing, putting all of our haves in one school and all of our have-nots in another. The money that puts quality programs in is hard to deny because it increases the quality of our school. What What I want to see, though, is that extra effort made to get some of our poorest and neediest children into some of those quality programs. I think I heard that you're making much more progress in contacting and trying to get them to sign up. My one concern is with Boone, I don't know this area that you're zoning, is it a high poverty area? The zone, because I can't visualize where that is. I see a map, but are they the children that you could never get to sign up because they're the neediest and?
Well, and remember, when you look at these, if you look at, I appreciate Pam when she did the maps, you know, she sort of differentiated, the circles are the sixth graders, the squares are the seventh, and the triangles are the eighth graders.
And I have to say, I am not a GIS person, and I do want to give credit, I'm sorry, to Eric Carroll in our IT department. He's put a lot of work into drawing these maps, so I want to give him credit for the work he's
So
done.
remember, the vast majority of the seventh and eighth graders in that are returning back to Lake Alfred. 100% of the eighth graders, because for all intents and purposes, they're like a zone population there. Sixth graders, we know that we've got somewhere around 85% because of constant movement. We're going to continue to recruit those kids, and the final numbers are going to be even higher. And for the sixth grade, we're going to open those seats at Dundee L and Daniel Jenkins. So we really should minimize as much as possible. I mean, I'm open to suggestions if someone has some other ideas. I've tried to think of every possible way to limit the input on those turnaround schools so that we're not, you know, we don't want to just move problems from one place to the other. But I will tell you that I also think that the students who are coming back to Lake Alfred, when I work with those students, Saturday work, those are students who are getting excited, who, you know, as they're unpacking the fabrication labs and the maker spaces, they're starting to see school in a completely different way. And so I get really excited. I mean, I'm trying to temper that because I wish I could do it for every school. But I know that at Lake Alfred will make a difference. And if you look at your free and reduced lunch numbers at our last round of grants, Dundee L, Dundee Ridge, even, you know, because we're still talking those fun community designations, but they're all over 50% free and reduced lunch. We've got diversity in those schools. We're going to have to make some decisions on, do we want to put units and hope the kids come in terms of ESE? But that was part of that whole weighting system when we came to you with that weighting system of weighting the socioeconomic status and weighting the race piece and weighting the students with disabilities and ELL pieces so that we did have as much diversity in the schools as we can. That was not in place with those original 8 magnets. It didn't need to be because we had those very strict waiting list guidelines, but we are trying to move in that direction.
I just don't want to harm.
Oh, I understand completely.
The other schools.
Sure.
And the neediest of our kids are the ones that I don't want to be just bumped from school.
Right, and that's why we wanted to keep those 7th graders going into 8th grade at the school, even though when we wrote the grant, we made it 5 to 7. And remember, we wrote the grant 5 to 7, not including the 8th grade, because we did not have a program ready for them to enter at 9th grade. And Florida Polytech said they needed more time to develop their 11th and 12th grade program. So there was rationale behind doing it, but this way we'd keep the kids at the school site. You know, they're not going to be part of the grant, but I'm quite sure that if the lab is empty, no one's going to say, oh, don't walk in there. I mean, absolutely not. So we're going to try to be as inclusive as possible.
Mr. Townsend?
I think, I'll be fast. I mean, I think the outcome of this is we need to be thinking right now really hard how we're going to help Boone, how we're going to help Stanbaugh. It's much more, frankly, much more important than this, I think. I mean, this is already in motion. What are we doing that's going to be supportive to Stanbaugh and Boone? Do we need to get extra behavioral people in there? Do we get extra, I mean, what grants can we, I mean, is there magnet school fallout grants that we can apply for? You know, I mean, those kind of things. And Hazel, I just, to be honest, a number of our magnet schools do exactly what the most elite charter schools do. There is not a dime's worth a difference between the split of McKeel and Bach and Lincoln in the way you have, you know, the gifted kids on one hand and the ESE kids on the other. You know, I think there is the function of the older ones versus the newer ones. One of the reasons why I really want to sit down and explore it and not take this conversation over for 6 hours now. But yeah, we really need to come up, I think, with a general policy for these kind of special schools and when they're appropriate and when they're not, and how we can work together and all sorts of things. So.
I'm looking at the middle schools affected by the rezoning, and from 16 to 17 to 17 to 18, those numbers for Stambaugh and for Boone are only showing the 1.5% growth rate. So are we not expecting there to be any increase in those numbers from this?
Well, if you will look at the 5-year history, the reason we put that together is because at this particular time, all the application process for the charters and the magnets is not complete. The lottery has not, so we really don't know what those projected enrollments for next year are going to be. So I put that column in there just to show that if we did have a 1.5% increase in enrollment, to show that we would still have, if you look at the capacity in the next column, there's 8,713 student stations available. The middle schools in the northeast area are really not as concerning as far as concurrency and as far as space is concerned as the elementaries and the high school. So Boone, we could probably expect would see a little bit of increase due to the growth up in that area, but if you will look at their capacity, they have 1,217 student stations, and this year they have 778 students enrolled. So even with if they were to see a 1.5% bump next year, they would still have space available for the students.
I'm not necessarily looking at the space available, but how many students are we expecting them? Do we have any idea? Is it going to be 50 students? Is it going to be 200 students? Do we have any idea what those?
We will have a better idea when the application process is finished and the lottery is drawn with the magnets and the charters. Then we'll be able to run the numbers and have better information.
But at this point, the application process is staying open through.
Right. So,
whatever.
So March 11th, everyone who currently has applied will get their letters. And that's not just for these schools, that's for all the schools.
So after March 11th, we'll have a better idea.
Well, then they have 2 weeks to respond to say if they're taking their seats. However, when you look at the slides that I went through earlier on the PowerPoint, all of those students who were sitting in the school and selected to apply are automatically enrolled. So it's not as though the Cumbie students who applied go in the pile with everyone else. They're accepted, and then we open the rest of those seats for everyone else. The 6th graders who applied at Lake Alfred Adair get accepted first, and then everyone else who applied gets accepted. The 7th graders who are rolling up from Lake Alfred Adair don't have to apply, they're all going to be there next year. So that's what we mean by priority enrollment. So we will have a better idea, but I will tell you it'll be a moving target from now until the day school starts and maybe for a month after. In my perfect world, everyone would have a seat and no one would move, but it doesn't ever work that way.
Mr. Wilson?
Madam Superintendent, do we have parents for the district meeting for that?
No, we do not. There are no
So,
parents.
could we talk about the student information system next? Since I've learned that that's not longer supported and the no patches available for security, I have some heartburn about that. So I hope we can move on that pretty quickly.
Are there any other questions on this one? Okay, so we will move to the student information system. I know there are no parents, and Dr. Barrios is coming up. As she's coming forward, the summer information that you see, item 6, that was, it was just basically an information item, for you regarding summer, as we start preparing for that.
You're getting through that stuff, that's pretty scary.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this pretty expeditiously and just kind of give you a holistic view of some things that we've been working on, and then kind of dive into the specifics about our student information system. I tried to put sort of a business strategy map together in terms of how information systems and technology can help drive the larger focus areas of the district. If you look at community priorities, which drive the board's strategic goals, and we all know becoming an A district, increasing grad rate, the goals have been defined. And in order for those priorities to be met from a strategic standpoint in technology, we've got to have robust data systems to inform instruction. We've got to have systems for staff development and evaluation, business intelligence and analytics, IT governance, project management, safety and security. Those are all core strategic things that are going to help the board achieve those goals. But at a foundation level, the things that we've been focusing on, we've got to have robust applications. We've got to have service excellence. We've got to have an infrastructure to support it, and we've got to have security and risk mitigation. So I'm going to show you in a moment where we've been focusing on that. But aligned with that, you've got state requirements in terms of state reporting requirements, data requirements that increase yearly. We've got assessment requirements, online assessment requirements, and infrastructure requirements that are coming down from the state. And you've got the digital classroom plan, which really in the last 3 years has begun to drive the technology plan. That's where the instructional piece comes. So every year we have to submit a digital classroom plan, and the focus of that is really to move into a digital learning environment focused on workforce, career, and readiness. So if you look at, we also have to consider industry trends, and that is moving into a digital workforce and a digital learning environment, and also the trends that are affecting some of the core systems that we have in place. And obviously the foundation of everything that we're trying to do is student success. So given that, over a year ago, we had some audit findings around security and risk assessment that was presented. We also had requirements from the digital classroom plan that required us to do an infrastructure assessment. And I also had a need to look at where are we in order for us to kind of look at where we need to go. And so over a year ago, and this is a little bit busy and some technical, but what I really want you to see kind of from a visual perspective is we looked at security, we looked at management, we looked at availability, and we looked at recoverability. So this notebook has all of the different reports that were done based on industry standards in all those core areas, and there were all these benchmarks around those 4 areas. And where we sat a little over a year ago, we had 16 core areas that required immediate attention. So we weren't in a really good space a year ago. Where we sit today, we've made significant improvements, and I'll share, you've got a little bit of data on how we did that. So we've moved significantly over the year, which is what we've been focusing on. And I can tell you that 4 of the 5 areas that are red requires immediate attention will be addressed in the next 4 to 5 months, because we are looking at a redesign of our network and implementation of certain core systems. So out of that area, we looked at our kind of a strategic, we called it our district strategic plan, but it really was our strategic plan on the foundation, on our infrastructure, security, and risk foundation work that we needed to do. And there were 10 areas that were identified. And as with any strategic plan, it's kind of 3 years, but really, in reality, it's it's going to be stretched out for 5 years. But these are actually in rank order. So the number 1 area we had to focus on was developing an IT security plan. That's always going to be something we're going to have to look at and address, just in the last several months with all of the phishing attacks and things that are happening, that we are always going to have to be focused on that. Upgrading legacy systems, I'm going to talk to you about in just a minute, because that's one of the core reasons we're here for discussion. But all of these others, redesign, recovery, create change management, each of those areas we've started addressing, and I handed a handout. And I just gave you a high-level summary under each of those areas, what the work that we've done in the last 12 to 14 months. And I'll also point out one of the things under E-rate. So in the past 2 years, we have gotten a significant amount of equipment through the E-rate process, which is a year-long process, and it's a bit arduous. But we've been able to make significant impact into the infrastructure in our schools and our core. The other thing to keep in mind is that some of this work has to be timed. So for example, we're going to replace our core router. That was processed through E-rate. E-rate was 4 months late this year because of they put a new portal into place, so that was delayed. But I can't just stop and put a new core router in the middle of starting testing. So we have to time certain things. Some things we may be able to do on the weekend. Some things we aren't going to be able to do until June when school is out, in terms of big infrastructure things that we're looking at. But we're making significant progress, and we are, the big project we're actually focused on right now is our redesign of the core network, including the Lakeland Fiber project and our disaster recovery plan, which we've got to do. And we've got significant plans and phases in place to address that. So given that, I want to move into one of the systems that we really have to address, and that's our student information system. They mentioned Brenda Tajuri. Brenda used a system and was very adept at a system that was a homegrown system. And one of the challenges we have right now in this district is we've got a lot of homegrown legacy systems that only a few people know, and people that have developed them are no longer here. So we've got to look at an enterprise solution across the board in order to really mitigate the risk and the outdatedness. So currently, the concerns with our student information system is that Genesis has no support. We own the code, we've owned it for years. There's no 911 number that we're gonna call. We have to figure it out. But the biggest issue is it's sitting on a platform that is declared end of life. We have a couple of years of extended support, but it was end of life in January of 2015. So it means Microsoft's not putting a lot of significant effort, which introduces some vulnerabilities. Teachers only have access to Pinnacle Gradebook. They don't have access to the historical data for the students. So they're looking in multiple areas for data, and we're addressing that with a couple of things. But right now, they only see their grades. So they don't have a comprehensive view of the data. The other thing is Genesis requires some extensive manual programming. Every time the state changes data elements, and they do every year, we have to go in and make all those changes. If you're looking at an enterprise system, the company is going to make all those changes and stay up with all those updates. And in a nutshell, the fact we don't have timely, accurate data for them to make informed decisions. They are hamstrung, doing the best they can, but we don't have a good system. So at the end of the day, in summary, it just no longer meets our needs. So we went out and we've spent the better part of a year looking at a lot of different things, but we went out and you've got data that shows what all of the districts have done. So if you go back 7 to 8 years ago, 85% of the districts were on terms. Some districts moved away, but really in the last 5 to 6 years is when all of the districts started moving, primarily because of all the push for data and because of the race to the top requirements that we needed comprehensive data systems. So many of the districts started making that transition, and you can see the numbers. So in looking at that data, districts have already done that. We decided to bring in the 2 top systems that most districts were using. And so we invited them in. They presented to a cross-functional group. So we had principals, assistant principals, guidance counselors, key district folks that looked at it with a rubric based on user availability and interface things. And you've got that rubric. So they all evaluated it based on the presentation. And then each vendor also presented to the technical team. So we spent an hour with their technical team understanding some of the more technical things that the user group really didn't need to kind of sit in. Then we also called and conferred with many other districts across the state that have gone through this. What are the pain points? What are the lessons learned? What can we learn from what you've done? So you've got a summary data from all of the districts that we've talked to. We also then sent a subgroup of the people that were in the user group out to a district to actually look at the system and talk to the people that were implementing the system, and you've got that data as well. Then we asked the companies to give us a cost estimate. Now, you've got two cost estimates. You've got an estimate direct from the company over 5 years, And then I gave you a high-level timeline, and that's very high level, but we're really talking 14 to 16 months. And then I gave you a breakdown that included some of the additional resources that we're gonna need, because we can't kid ourselves. We know from the smaller implementation in the vocational program that we didn't add any resources, and we struggled. We lost, like Brenda Tajuri, we had somebody that was core to that. We lost that person unexpectedly, and it delays and slows us down. So we know we've got to have additional resources to keep what we're doing functional until we make that transition. So that's where we are. What I can tell you is it's a tough transition. Make no mistake, this is a very, very tough transition. What I can tell you is, having lived through that and done it, when you get to the other side, there's a lot of positives, but it is a lot of hard work to make this transition, because it is a major, major shift, and keeping everything going and trying to transition to a new system is hard. So I don't want to, put any false pretenses that it's not going to be hard work, and we'll have some trials and tribulations. And I think we have several key staff members that have been through transitions in the last 3 to 4 years in other districts. So we know some of the pain points, but we also know it's critical for us to give our teachers a system that's going to provide them the adequate data they need. So with that, I'll open it up and answer any questions or...
I understand that it's going to be very difficult, challenging, and painful, but not doing it is an option.
The risk and the vulnerabilities of not doing it, you're absolutely right, that's kind of where we are today.
So it appears you've got 2 companies you looked at.
Yes.
Do you have a recommendation?
Well, if I were to look at the straight data, I think there's a pretty clear number one in almost all the avenues. So, I would go with the number one, which is what the committee actually recommended as well. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was gonna ask that
Is
same.
that focus?
Right, that was my question.
Yeah.
I wanna know what you're recommending, because you've done all the research and,
Based on the data that's presented there,
Yes.
I would recommend, and the committee would highly recommend, Focus.
okay. And what other districts in the state or whatever have utilized Focus?
There's a spreadsheet in
I
the
didn't get
data
there.
that has highlighted what each of the districts are doing. Let me pull that.
Yeah, I can read it later, it's fine. So that's that's pretty much.
Yeah, so you have kind of a spreadsheet that looks like this, and if you just look at, these are the 2 columns that are Focus and Skyward. And the other thing to point out is, if you look at the larger districts, most of the larger districts went with Focus. When you look at Skyward, 9 of the districts are listed there because of I think it was NEFAC that went, so they're the consortium, so they negotiated it as a
I
consortium.
see,
That's
as
why
a
you've got 9
group.
districts that are all part of a consortium. So, I think there's a lot of factors that would benefit us in terms of going with Focus, price point. We're already implementing it, so we know the data structures. We've got several staff that have come from different districts that know that system. But again, we did our due diligence to look across the board, and I think the challenge of just opening it up is that you have to meet state reporting. And the reason you don't see a lot of other companies is nobody's gonna come in and be the guinea pig to try to report to the state and not have that data accurate. And so you've got 2 companies that have actually worked that out. So when something comes out from the state, both of those companies are gonna be on top of that. We're not gonna have to deal with that. They'll take care of that. And I think if you go with another company, you're starting from scratch, and you're gonna be the one that has to figure out all of those integrations. And our struggle, our challenge, is that the state is using an archaic COBOL reporting data system. And that limits us with what we can do.
Mr. Harris?
You have come to Polk County and brought an outsider's view and have been able to evaluate where we are in terms of IT. From what you have seen, would it be your opinion that over the years we have reduced staff in IT to the point that it has critically hurt the district?
Yes, given the fact that you've got a lot of legacy homegrown systems. And so the challenge becomes, You've got all of these disparate systems. You've got people that have developed them, and I can tell you from the 2.5 years I've been here, the trend is we bring them in young, we give them a whole lot of experience because it's a complex environment. They get to a certain level and we can't pay them and they can't afford it, and they go to Publix. And we've had challenges where we've had 2 30-somethings die unexpectedly. And so, I mean, if you throw all that in, it creates challenges for us. What I can tell you is you have a phenomenally dedicated staff here that has done a tremendous amount of work. And you've also got a staff that tried to do a lot with a shoestring budget, and you got 100,000 kids, and you've got huge requirements that the state has mandated. And so one of the things that I saw right away is there were no real tools to evaluate the network, to manage the network, to see what's going on in the network, and they tried to use freeware, and it doesn't work. So we invested in tools because now at least we have mitigating some security issues that we've had in the past. I mean, we've got work to do, but I'm actually very proud of what we've done in the 16 months, especially at the core, leveraging E-rate for schools. We've replaced at middle and high schools, we've replaced their entire wireless structure and their entire core switches. We're getting ready to do all the elementary core switches, and we took the wireless out of the secondary schools and are moving it down because it's still good technology, but secondary required more robust. And then the other things are we're replacing some core equipment in the core network because we have 7 gigs. We've also more than doubled our internet pipe. And the other thing to understand is it's all nice and good to put everything in the cloud, but you've got to have a bigger internet pipe to do that. And if you own a fiber network, you can get a lot faster speed than a shared highway. So there's some critical balance and conversations that you have, and actually we're in the midst of some of those conversations now with disaster recovery. Do we put it in the cloud? I mean, you got Azure, and there's a lot of things. Do we put all of it in the cloud? Do we put some of it in the cloud and some of it local? So those are the conversations we're having now, and long term is what's the cost effectiveness? Because another conversation about disaster recovery, do you spend a lot of money in the hardware just in case you need it, or do you spend a certain amount and then have a system where you can invoke and increase the capacity when you need it, meaning more of a service? So there's a lot of things, software as a service, disaster recovery as a service, and there's a balance and a mix. And
Risk assessment.
So we're looking at all of those, try to figure out what's our most economic trend. But we have to look, when I said we have to look at trends, one of the things we learned just recently with SAP. So we're getting ready to look at SAP from an HR perspective and redoing that. But one of the things we learned is in the next 8 years, our current installation won't exist. It's all going to be in the cloud. Now, 8 years sounds like a long way away, but it's not really a long way away when you're talking a complete ERP system. So we're going to look at that and say, you know, they're going to actually come in. We are a very prominent customer. So they are going to come in and actually look at what is our current situation, where do we want to go, and they're going to help provide a roadmap. And they're going to do that for nothing, for free, other than it will take our time, but it will at least then begin a roadmap. And that's what I mean about it takes people, time, and resources, and that's what's hard. A lot of lack of documentation and policies, not for the fact that they didn't want to do it, they just don't have the resources to do it. So when somebody leaves, we don't have good documentation.
So to wrap that up, if you don't have sufficient staff, you cannot produce updated operations and procedures manuals when unfortunately that person does pass away. Someone knows where the light switch is the next morning. Thank you.
Ms. Stills, then Mr. Wilson.
My question is pretty simple. What's the total cost for this? And where is the money coming from, Mike?
This will be LCI money, it will not be operational. Right, Mike? That's what we're looking at?
Correct.
And if we look at the estimated 5-year cost, I included at least a DBA and a programmer trainer position, adding that in with hardware. And I'm estimating hardware because until we have the conversation specifically, we won't know that investment. But if you look at the focus investment over 5 years, you're talking $3.6 million approximately over a 5-year period.
What's the timeline?
The timeline would, if we can make a decision quickly, would be August, rolling it out, August of 2018. So 18-19 school year, we will start right away. We will spend a large part of the time converting and moving all the data. What will happen is about this time next year, we'll start talking scheduling, we'll train scheduling, roll the school year, get the courses up and running, all that process that we're now gonna be doing in Genesis, we'll be doing in Focus. And estimating the April, May, June timeframe, we'll start rolling out training to the schools. I'm actually less concerned about the teachers because they're already using Pinnacle, which is more of a web-based kind of grade book. And going from a grade book to another grade book, and since we've got our elementaries in that, is not the hard transition. The hard transition is making sure that the registrars get all the courses in, because that maps to those grade books. But I'm not so concerned. I think teachers will not have such a hard time transitioning. And I can say that because I went from a district that was in Pinnacle and went to Focus at the secondary level. Where my pain point was when we did it is the elementary did not have a grade book. We made that transition 2 years ago when we went from Elegrade to Pinnacle. That was hard. I mean, if you heard talk to any elementary, that was a hard transition, but they've made that transition. So I'm confident that the teachers, we can look at a smooth transition as long as we have a good training plan and a support plan in place. I'm confident in that. It's the registrars and the guidance and some of the scheduling conversations at the secondary and elementary level.
So
Wilson, then Ms. Sellers.
Well, I want to talk about data governance for a moment, but before I do that, do you have the answer you need on Focus? Are we okay? Did you get your answer? I don't know if we made that consensus or not on that.
I don't think we have a choice.
Right.
Okay, I mean, I think there were a couple options, and you recommended Focus, and I just didn't know if anybody.
I didn't know if Ms. Sellers has anything else you want to add.
Oh, no, you've already made the transition from Pinnacle to Focus?
I've done it in other districts.
No,
What I'm saying
that's
is I've
right.
kind
No.
of lived that transition, that one on the teacher end, because they're already using a similar product. The difference is going to be, they're gonna have all of that data in one system. Currently, they only have Pinnacle. They don't have any of the Genesis data. We pull it out and try to make dashboards. When we move to this, they will have all of that data about their students that they know in one system.
But that's what but you've already made a transition, so you really know a lot of the.
I've lived it, yes.
Okay, you've lived it.
Which is why I can tell you.
And you're willing to live it again?
If I'd have my druthers, I wouldn't want to be living it again, no, because I know it's hard, but I also know coming out on the other end, what it will do for teachers. And what I can tell you that was critical is my principals and APs looked at data much more efficiently without asking queries and things to be run. They really took ownership because they had a system that they could use that made sense. Prior to that, like here, it's write this query and have a programmer put all that together. So I think you're gonna see a big improvement, but it's gonna be a tough it's just, anytime you do it, there are glitches. I feel confident that we'll do the technology. It's really trying to make sure that we minimize the people impact and understand where they are, and make sure we provide the training, make sure we have the help desk, and make sure we have a good infrastructure in place to help make that transition.
Well, it's comforting to know somebody has lived it, because the unknown is scarier than a hard known to me. You're still here.
So I want to get back to Mr. Wilson, I didn't know.
I just have a very brief, obnoxious question. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I feel like I have to ask it. I mean, this looks like a good procurement process here. We've gone through and done a lot of it. Nobody's got a vendor relationship I need to know about. I mean, we have a history of that. I'm sorry, not we, but there's not going to be any kind of personal
we just
contact.
that's the data. There's no.
Okay.
I can tell you, I played devil's advocate.
Yeah, he was.
You guys understand why I asked that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, back to Mr. Wilson.
So this goes to Mr. Townsend's question about vendor relationships. It also goes to the issue that we've ran into in years past. We've made some unfortunate choices related to IT purchases, and it has to do with data governance. I mean, from my perspective and in my experience, that's how you manage that to ensure you don't have those issues.
Correct.
So my question is, do we currently have a strong data governance team that reports directly to the superintendent?
No.
Is that
No.
currently in place?
No.
So
Which
then-
is why you get that big black long.
That was exactly.
So the
what
hard part is,
brought
you
that
get in the
point in.
midst of trying to do the work, and oftentimes that builds your capacity and controls that, but it's also like policies and procedures, one of the things that kind of falls down because you're so busy trying to manage the work. So, yes, data governance is something we, from an SAP, and I've said that, and I've actually had conversations on the whole SAP side, because you got risk, you got payroll, you got HR, you got all these people, transportation that have ownership in SAP, but we really don't have a good governance conversation of where are we going, and I think we'll get some help going through that process on SAP, but we still need to put SAP and SIS and Performance Map, all the big systems in a big map and say, okay, what's our priority? And then stick with that, or have conversations of adjusting that.
And it's important that we have some independent folks on that committee to be
Correct.
involved in those purchase decisions and make sure that we're making
Yeah.
appropriate recommendations.
Yes,
So I would hope we could work on that soon.
How do
Yes,
how do
sir.
you define independent, just out of curiosity, real quickly, just what's independent mean?
Well, I think you look for, you may look in the community for other
Okay,
CIOs.
that's fine.
Outside of the district,
Uh,
right?
outside the district, but I would suggest involving other CIOs from other
Yeah.
institutions
True.
to help be a part of that,
Yeah.
because they have background and experience.
Very good.
Yep.
You bet.
And I certainly welcome the conversation.
We've sent enough people to public, maybe they come help.
There you go. I would love to bring some of those people back, because we are a breeding ground for them.
So I think we have a consensus of the board that we're moving, and we're gonna bring
Forward.
it
So
forward.
at the next
Focus,
board
focus.
meeting, do you want me to put that package together and we'll bring it as a board
Yes,
item?
that'd be
Yes,
great.
please.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
for all your
Thank you.
work. Thank you so much.
The other items are just information, including the summer school information. I know we're tight on time. We have the hearing, discipline hearings at 4:45, and there are no parents. And I believe Dr. Yates, if there are any summer questions, he can fill those or via email or anything, but so we can continue moving forward with summer extended learning.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, everyone.
Are we voting on the